Today's date is November 20th, 2017. Hello and welcome to another episode of Hit the Books Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Holcomb.
And I'm Emery Saunders.
And today we have a special Thanksgiving edition of Hit the Books Podcast for you.
Oh, wonderful.
For those of you not familiar with our show, we talk about comic books. I'm typically your DC fanboy.
And I'm usually the Marvel guy.
And we go over the latest news, the new releases coming on Wednesday to your local comic book shops.
And what else you can expect as a true believer.
Oh, no. We'll get to that later.
I'm going a bit Stan Lee today.
And then at the end of the show, we and a guest, should we have one, bring topics of discussion about the world of comic books and end on a happy note.
Hopefully.
So without further ado, let's get into it. Emery, what have you been reading?
Well, I've been recently catching up on X-Men Gold, since I've been a bit behind on that one. I think I'm up to issue 8 or 7 right now. Hard to tell. But I've been reading that, and I actually just read an issue that you ended up getting. It was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yep.
Number 9, was it?
76.
76. Right. Way off on that one. Whoo!
Yeah, for those of you who did not watch episode 11, it was our variant cover of the week
Yes.
by Kevin Eastman.
Yes. But, yeah, that's what I've been reading recently. Actually, I take that back. There's another thing. There is a graphic novel written by Ta-Nehisi Coates for Black Panther. And I just saw it on the shelves in the library and just decided to give it a look over. I'm not done with it yet, but when I am done, you can expect a review on that later.
What are your early impressions?
Early impressions are, let's just say, no place in Africa can ever catch a break. Even when you're super technologically advanced Wakanda, for some reason, like if it's not fighting coming from the outside, there's fighting on the inside.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it went very kind of Game of Thronesy.
Really?
Yeah. We'll see how it turns out.
All right. Well, I look forward to that. I have actually read a lot of comics this week, surprisingly.
Hey!
For those of you who have not seen it on our channel yet, or on our Stitcher or iTunes channel, we reviewed Justice League.
Yeah!
And it was quite a fruitful, long 2.5-hour discussion. I managed to cut it down to about 2 hours and 20 minutes, but it's still pretty long.
Yeah. I think my voice is still recovering from doing the Christian Bale Batman.
I would recommend that you don't see it in theaters, but we'll get to that later.
Yes, we will get to that.
But we had video troubles because we tried a new camera. Didn't work out as well as we had hoped, and it was the second time we had recorded it, so we wanted to make sure the decision stayed fresh, besides, the time it takes to set everything up and do it over again.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, while I was editing each individual audio part and putting things together, I was just reading comics and trying to catch up on backlogs.
It's a pretty good time to do it.
I caught up on DC's Ragman comics.
Ooh.
I always say Ragman is a cool concept, so I very rarely dislike a Ragman comic. This one, it's not as good as some past forms of Ragman, but it's intriguing. I'll say that. It's kept me in it, and I'm enjoying it. So
Still has the base concept for him.
yeah. If you're unfamiliar with Ragman, basically Ragman is this guy that's been kind of possessed by these demon
The demon
raps
chiefs.
from some pharaoh or whatever. It's a little different every time, but it has like a curse, and basically Ragman consumes souls to sustain himself. And you generally gotta direct this power. Another one I read is one of the ones I picked up a few weeks ago that I think you read, Port of Earth.
Yeah.
From Image Comics here. And I liked it a lot. I thought it was really intriguing concept.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's about Earth gets visited by some random aliens for the first time, and over several years, they make a deal to make this Earth a hub, kind of like a fuel station, because their spaceships work on water. And since Earth is obviously abundant with water, it makes the perfect stop and the perfect reservoir for any kind of transport ship or anything like that.
Yeah.
So Earth makes a deal that in exchange for some of their technology, they will allow one port to be opened on Earth as long as no interaction happens. And unfortunately, as with anything, people and aliens don't really stick to what they're told. Humans try to interact with aliens try to interact with the humans. Sometimes things go wrong, and they have to create sort of like a planetary defense force / police force that monitors all these incoming and outgoing ships. And the aliens that had initially visited end up being less of a sort of United Nations of interplanetary travel and more of like an Exxon Mobil or Texaco or something.
Yeah. It definitely had the feel of what would basically happen if this is like a space version of like a dock.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. I'm digging the concept. We'll see how it goes from the first issue. The first issue is more or less just setting everything up, but I liked it a lot, and I look forward to picking up issue number 2. Next issue, I have Slots, which also comes from Image Comics, number 1. This one, I'm not really sure where it's going just yet. It is interesting, but the way it read felt like an epilogue to a TV show. Like, that first 10 minutes that sets everything up and not anything else.
Yeah.
And so basically you're just following this guy who's kind of a misfit. He's kind of at wit's end, wants to kill himself, out in the Vegas area generally. And he's kind of a scumbag ex-boxer, has a kid he hasn't seen in 10 years and this and that. And an old, I guess, romantic interest, I would guess, calls him in and says she needs his help with something. She runs a casino. She's got this act. A person they used to know is trying to run him out of town, and they need his help scheming a way to get rid of him or get him out of the way or outshine him, something.
Yeah.
And he leans back on his former boxing buddies, and then there's a little surprise at the end that's kind of interesting. But I'll probably pick up issue 2 just to see where it goes. But that initial setup was, it felt like really long and drawn out for no real reason. And there wasn't really too much in particular. And they were talking about people you don't know, and I'm going to forget their names by the second issue,
Yeah, it definitely, from what you've described, sounds like the pilot for a TV show or like the prologue to a movie.
Yeah, Slots seems like a story that'll be better once it's in a collected volume.
Yeah.
More so than as an individual comic book, because it seems like there's just a lot of setup that needs to happen still. And I feel like the first few issues are just going to be setting up for the final premise, which will be a good long story.
Yeah.
But it has promise. It's set up pretty nice. And then I was reading number 1 with a Bullet, which is another comic I picked up from Image. My habit of picking up number 1s, because I try to give everybody a chance, and you never know what'll be collectible and what won't be.
Yeah.
This one has really cool cover art. Really stuck out on the shelf. And basically, this one is about kind of I wouldn't say intern, but I guess side character / co-host on a talk show, a live reality talk show, kind of like Conan or something.
Yeah.
It's interesting, I guess, but it seems like it's basically just taking every extreme fear that a woman has when she puts herself on the internet in any way, shape, or form.
Oh.
And kind of exploits that and makes it so that several things happen. A fan kills themselves over their interaction on Twitter with them. Another fan stalks them and like grabs them by the arm and freaks out and falls off the building.
Oh my
and
god.
gets killed. And these aren't big things; they happen really quick in the story.
Yeah.
And then at the end, there's something that's a very common fear, I think, with most adult women who have sexual relationships. Yeah, outside of a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
Something gets posted on the internet, which doesn't seem to make sense to me because in the story she's depicted as a lesbian,
Huh.
and the thing that gets depicted at the end is clearly not representative
of
such things for this
yeah,
character.
That's
So it makes me curious about
odd.
two things. I'll probably pick up the second issue, but I kind of feel like this book is more of kind of an exploitative concept where it's just kind of playing on the fears that a lot of women have in this new digital society where everything is on the internet and anybody can dig up anything.
Almost
this
seems like
case-
a shock book.
Yeah, in this case, instead of like a hidden camera, they have like cameras in their contacts.
Oh.
And then at the end of the comic, there's like an expose by the creator, and then like another like expose about like woman being victimized by like predatory like cameras and interactions and
yeah.
stalkers that stalk them from Instagram or harass them or whatever else. And it's not false that these things happen. These things do happen. But I feel like it's just kind of predatory in its story nature.
Yeah.
And it makes me really uncomfortable, not because of the content, but because of the way it's kind of
presented.
Yeah, it's presented in a very preachy way, and it grosses me out because it kind of sets up a world where every guy is a piece of shit. Her boss is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
The guy friends are pieces of shit. The stalkers are obviously pieces of shit. And the only good characters, the only like normal, like kind characters, are her female friends and her lesbian lover. So
Wow.
I'm maybe it won't stay this way. Maybe it's totally not that way at all. But this first initial issue really gives me that impression, and it makes me really uncomfortable because I think it's going in a kind of, I don't know. I'm getting the impression that the creator, at least the writer, has very stark opinions of all men. And
think she might be writing with some confirmation bias.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I don't know. And it's not to say it's not intriguing or interesting. It is. The concept's interesting. Like, the first few panels is her, using this contact software to, like, imagine stabbing her boss or whatever, who's the host of the show. And, then they take it out, and it's part of the segment because they're advertising this new virtual reality technology. So I'm guessing that's part of the, what is happening and where this video is coming from. Maybe this video didn't even happen. Maybe it's just some virtual reality thing that was made up with this new technology or whatever to exploit the popularity of her or whatever.
Right.
So we'll see how it goes, where it goes. It's interesting. Again, like the exposés at the end, to be fair, started off talking about like the weird patents Sony has for contact cameras and how they could be used in secret, without anybody's consent.
Yeah.
And be monitored without their consent or intent, which was pretty interesting. It was, to be fair, it was a very interesting concept, very cool. But then it just got very kind of, I don't know.
It had like one message that it was kind of trying to rail home.
Yeah, just it portrayed all women as victims, and it portrayed all men as kind of
Predators.
sleazy scumbags, predators. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is obviously not the case.
Yeah. That's
both ways. It's it's not exclusively the case. I assure you.
right. Case
So
by case.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I would be interested to see how issue 2 goes, just to see whether or not it keeps going in that direction.
Yeah. Again, it might just be giving me that impression on purpose for a narrative reason, like trying to make it seem that way, and then maybe things will take a more normal turn as things come to light and we get more information. But this initial impression was very, very harsh, and I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm not familiar with the creator, so I don't know her background or anything, but beyond that expose at the end. So
Yeah.
interesting. I'll pick up issue 2 just to see where it goes. But it does have cool cover art. It does have very unique art structure inside the comic. And while the writing is kind of, I don't know, uncomfortable, it is well done. It is framed well. So
Okay.
the dialogue comes off as fairly natural for the most part. So I'll look forward to that. And then last week I talked about reading the Lock and Key volumes for a review.
Yeah.
I'm now in volume 3. Haven't got to the reviews because of the Justice League editing. Now that we don't have any more movies this season,
Yeah.
unless we see Valerian at some point, I should be free up to finally do these reviews and put them on our webpage, htbvids.com, if you want to check those out in the future. But again, this Lock and Key series is just so much fun. I'm having so much fun reading this comic series. And if you have like a Comixology Unlimited subscription, go ahead and get those volumes because most of them are available. Just really good. And again, I was rereading Nailbiter, but I still have to get through volume 2 there. But Lock and Key, I'm having so much fun with.
Ooh.
I didn't think I would have so much fun with this concept and the mysteries behind it and the characters. It's just really well done, and it's perfect for a comic book because it is, in sequences and perfect sequences where each individual key has a different power, idea, ability.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm sold.
Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. Lock and Key, great. It's a great book, and look forward to those reviews going up on our webpage and hopefully some videos later on, if we have the time.
Oh, we'll make time somewhere. Just gotta find it.
So let's get into the segment we mentioned earlier. Did the content match the drapes?
Which drapes did we have last time?
Last week we had Batwoman number 9. And we had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 76.
Right.
Both were great covers, specifically the Ninja Turtles cover by Kevin Eastman. Really love the covers. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was starting a new arc, so we were able to hop in at number 76 without being lost.
Right.
And I'll say it was interesting, but I wanted to see more of the Turtles.
That's a fair point.
It was fine for what it was, but I didn't care enough about these Triceratop people
Right.
to actually
I
care.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see the Turtles do some stuff.
Right. That's kind of what at least I would hope to expect from a book that's called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But I can appreciate what they were doing. They're having to set up what's going to be the conflict between the Turtles and the Triceratons.
Yeah.
With that said, we should have had more Turtle.
Yeah. Overall, it's an average book, but it looks like it's setting up for a pretty fun event with the Ninja Turtles. So if you're a Ninja Turtle fan, I'd say pick up 76. Not only for the awesome variant art for the Eastman cover,
Oh, yeah.
but also because it's setting up for what looks like it's going to be a fun story, a cool story with the Triceratons.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that looks like it's going to be like classic like 80s to 90s comic book fare, which I've always loved that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I wasn't able to find like a good condition copy of Batwoman number 9. So I didn't read it. Again, it's a number 9, so we would have to play a lot of catch up, and I haven't been reading the current run of Batwoman.
Right.
But generally speaking, Batwoman is a pretty good comic book. I don't know how, but they always seem to have a decent writer on the Batwoman comic books, and the art is always outstanding.
Yeah.
The Batwoman art is always good, consistently across DC's reboots and everything. So I would say it's, even though I haven't read it and I don't know where they're at in that story and I don't know how they're interacting with the Rebirth world right now, Batwoman in general is a good book to pick up. So if you have been following Batwoman, I'd probably say I would guess, take an educated guess based on the premise of the story and based on the past with this character. It's probably a good story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. DC, for all intents and purposes, somehow manages to have a pretty good grasp of how to write that character.
Yeah. Or at the very least, assign appropriate writers to them. So,
right.
And just a shout out, Tom Waltz and Kevin Eastman wrote the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 76, and Batwoman is currently written by Margaret Bennett. So, props to those people, props to those individuals. The content did match the drapes.
Hey!
And with that, let's get into our news. First up, we have a lot of documentaries out, specifically single episode series that go for a small run there. The first one we're going to talk about is called So Much Damage, How Image Comics Changed the World. And this is debuting on the Sci-Fi website. I don't know if it's going to be on the Sci-Fi channel proper. It didn't say anything in the source, but they released a trailer for it. And today, November 20th, it goes up on the Sci-Fi website, which seems to be free to download and watch. So if that sounds interesting to you, and it does to me,
oh yeah,
you should probably go out and watch it. It's a 5-part documentary about the establishment, founding, and proliferation of Image Comics and how it affected the greater comic book world. It features big names in comics, including like Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, Rob Kirkman, and Rob Liefeld. So definitely check that out. If you're not feeling it after the first episode or two, feel free to skip it. But I have a sneaky suspicion that this is going to be a really good documentary series. For those of you unfamiliar with Image, we applaud Image all the time because they do so many things that we always harp on. They took the barcode off the front of the covers. They always have unique writing, unique art. They have adult books, they have kid books, and it's always very clear how they're framed. They run charity with their profits with the anthology collection for the Las Vegas shooters. They're always releasing new books. They're never tied down to nonsensical continuity like Marvel and DC proper. It's just a great overall comic company, and they do everything right. And I think that's largely because, for those unfamiliar, the people that created the company, guys like Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane, they were more or less run out by the terrible practices of Marvel and DC.
Oh, yeah.
And another big part by the Comics Authority Code, which comic companies were strictly adhering to, unfortunately, for far longer than they should have.
Yeah, definitely.
And it definitely limited the depth comic characters could have, resulting in a very corny, very awful 90s period, especially, where comics were very much weren't worth the paper they were printed on sometimes.
Yeah, it would be in the 90s, depending on which year it was. Few and far between, you'd have a comic that was actually any good or worth reading. I'm so glad, honestly, that happened, because otherwise we wouldn't have characters like Invincible, Spawn, the entire cast of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Half
the books I just named that were intriguing to me were Image books. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just a blatant example of how much pull they have in the current market and how much influence they have on comic fans like you and me.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that really helps them out, especially with us older comic book readers, is that they're not tied to just doing, tights and fights.
Yeah.
It's like we can do, as you were saying, more adult stories, more stories that were grounded in reality.
Absolutely. So definitely check that out. Again, it's on the Sci-Fi website. It's called So Much Damage, How Image Comics Changed the World. Next up, we have another documentary series that we watched the first episode of. We still have to watch the second and third episodes, which have come out since.
Yeah.
This is an AMC documentary called Robert Kirkman's Secret History of Comic Books, and it premiered last week in a 2-hour opening episode, or set of episodes, I should say. It's made up of 6 one-hour episodes and will feature interviews with people like Stan Lee, Patty Jenkins, Linda Carter, Kevin Smith, Todd McFarlane, and a bunch of other people we saw in there, J.K. Simmons, just everybody you can think of in the comic book world, and even people that aren't really in the comic book world.
Michelle Rodriguez,
Yeah.
we're looking at you.
I don't know.
Unless she's just a nerd.
Has she played a character that I'm unfamiliar with, or I
I
don't remember her playing a
no,
comic
at
character.
least. Well, she hasn't played a character that's been in a comic book,
Yeah.
but a couple of the characters that she's played definitely belong in one.
Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious, Resident Evil.
Yeah.
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 Avatar.
Ugh.
I mean, you say that, but that her character, it helped in a movie that just wasn't that good.
So yeah, we watched the first episode. What I think we both came off feeling that the first episode, which was about kind of the establishment of our current interpretation of Marvel Comics from Atlas Comics,
Yeah.
and the two people that primarily pushed it forward, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Who's Jack Kirby?
Oh, that guy that was trying to take off Stan Lee's credit. Stan Lee came off very poorly in that first episode. And it's weird to say because everybody loves Stan Lee. But he had a very, very kind of bad appearance in this first episode. And it wasn't wrong.
Yeah, it was very clear from that episode that there were ways in which he was basically abusing his staff.
Yeah.
And it definitely showed.
The least of which was Jack Kirby, who is very much heavily important in the creation of what you imagine in today's Marvel Comics, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Created the first, version of Spider-Man and Silver Surfer and the Fantastic Four. He drew all these people.
Yeah. It's like he's
Hulk
responsible for a lot of the first iterations of many of the Marvel characters that people know and love today.
Yeah. I mean, Stan Lee was not an artist. He could not create these, characters, and
he was an idea guy and a dialogue man.
From what we know, even the costume designs themselves didn't really have much to do with Stan Lee. Stan Lee just made up a story and thought of a guy with powers or a woman with powers in some context and what they were.
Yeah.
And then
it was up to Jack Kirby to kind of decipher what they would look like.
Kirby would create it and give him that vision. And even in telling the story, Stan Lee just made himself sound bad. When he was talking about the establishment of the Silver Surfer, who was exclusively Jack Kirby's creation.
Yeah.
Stan Lee saw this character in the comic and said, who is this guy? I didn't make up this guy. And Jack Kirby goes, well, I thought Galactus should have a steward that, kind of goes ahead of everybody and scouts out the planets and stuff.
A herald, if you will.
And Stan Lee had to give himself at least some of the credit in his own story, even though he had just said that Jack Kirby created him. And then I named him Silver Surfer, and I made him into a great character. And I was
behold, true believers.
Stan, that was obviously his.
It's like you literally in the same story just admitted to, one, not coming up with a character, and two, trying to, in some way, shape, or form, take credit for a character you did not come up with.
Yeah, and they kind of painted this picture of Stan Lee being kind of like the Hugh Hefner of Marvel Comics, where he was just the face of everything and took the credit for everything and kind of left all the artists and sub-writers, in the basement in what they called literally the dungeon. And there's one picture in there of Jack Kirby sweating his butt off in his underwear, making this giant, comic panel.
In what I can only assume is like a very arid summer afternoon.
And I'm most people who are familiar with any kind of comic history know that they had a big falling out, and they never really quite made up. They were cordial, but they never seemed to quite get it back together and make up.
Yeah.
Even though Stanley has been said to have tried to make up, but his, Jack Kirby's wife still held resentment against him for taking all the credit, which basically means all the money.
Yeah.
From Jack Kirby. So it was really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't like that they had all these interviews with people that were not relevant to the story they were telling. Like
right.
J.K. Simmons had nothing to contribute to it. Like even Kevin Smith, like he's a notorious comic guy. He's very knowledgeable, obviously. But
it seemed quite a bit like they were just reading.
He had nothing to do with this story. He wasn't around.
Right.
He wasn't reporting on this. And they had one comic historian, and then everybody else, was primarily like celebrities that had nothing to do with it. And then there was a handful of like artists and creators who commented on it, like Todd McFarlane.
Yeah.
And he had one brief thing in there where he sounded very bitter
Oh.
against Stan Lee and Marvel in general.
Oh, yeah. He was so mad.
Which, again, the Image documentary that's on Sci-Fi would probably elaborate on why he's so bitter.
Oh, I'm sure.
Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee both famously did work for Marvel and then left. So something to think about. So we also watched the second episode of Robert Kirkman's Secret History of Comic Books on AMC. 3 episodes have come out now. Episode focused on Wonder Woman and the dynamic between Marston, the creator, and his technically live-in spouses, but one was a spouse and one was a assistant who had his kids.
Yeah.
And the strange history they kind of share together, and the unique place they have and kind of feminist history and stuff.
Yeah, there's a movie coming out called Professor Marston and the Wonder Women, which may or may not do a dramatized version of their life as a whole.
Yeah.
Which may take some embellishments in the places where people really just don't know exactly what happened.
Yeah. I'm starting to take from these episodes that maybe take what they say with a grain of salt in each of these episodes.
Yeah.
Because the first episode, they very clearly frame Stanley as this kind of villain. For better or worse,
Yeah.
And he brings it a little bit upon himself, but not entirely. And the second episode, they focus on the kind of suggested things far more than the reality of the situation. The only reason I know these things is because I listened to a recent NPR interview with a few biographers and the children of grandchildren, I should say, of the Marston family. And this episode on AMC paints it, at least for the first half of the episode, as exclusively this like fetish bondage thing, and they just have all these scenes with a bunch of like women spanking men and just like a bunch of silly stuff,
Yeah.
And,
like very BDSM heavy.
And yes, he had like the chains and stuff in the Wonder Woman comics and the weird like bondage positions and stuff like that could be interpreted as fetishized and whatever. But the way he and his wife usually explained it was supposed to, her weakness was being bonded in chains or in ropes or whatever, because that was representative of how women were kind of tied down by the hands of the male-dominated world in the 1930s and 40s and stuff, and how, every issue she would get free and break her bonds or whatever, somehow, some way, and that was representative of the future of woman, breaking free of the social bonds of, this kind of masculine dominance.
Yeah,
and
that was the point originally.
Yeah. And I'm sure the truth is a little bit in the middle there. There probably was a little bit of a fetishistic aspect to it. But I think that wasn't the primary message, and that was clearly demonstrated by the outrage that was experienced after Marston's death, and they started redoing the comics to be this, kind of ditzy a girl that doesn't have powers anymore that wants to be, married and going
Yeah.
as a romance novelist or whatever, and then in the late 60s, early 70s, they made her into this super spy instead of what she had been before, which is a superheroine. Which sounds very familiar, doesn't it, Emery? I believe a favorite character of mine was taken away from their superhero mantle and made into a super spy. Grayson! You fucks. Another sex icon that was taken away from their powerful role and made into a nonsensical super spy.
Sex icon for who?
Everybody. He bends in ways you will never understand. Those glorious spanks.
Okay. Yeah. I think I get it now.
He's my heterosexual life mate. He just doesn't know it yet. But
life mate, I'll believe.
They did cover many aspects of it, but I think if you want like the realistic representation of this and those events and those people that were involved, his wife and his, the student turned, live-in wife, Olive, they both had key influences in creating Wonder Woman. Marston kind of made Wonder Woman look like, the student Olive, and then gave Wonder Woman more of the personality of his wife, who was the strong, independent, working woman who kind of held the family together financially.
Yeah.
While Olive took care of the kids and everything at home and took care of, the stereotypical domestic duties or whatever, and Marston kind of did his own thing and made his own projects and whatever else. So I guess Marston made out pretty good with it, but
that he did.
It is really unique, and it's from a very unique time in history that's hard to replicate and hard to interpret with a modern perception,
Right. It's
and I
like
think
we're a bit far removed from that entire situation.
And I think there is a little bit too much in this AMC series where they're trying to read way too much into it and make it something that I don't think it was.
Yeah, they're making a lot of inferences based on what they can see from the comics and trying to read between two invisible lines.
Yeah,
as far as like trying to interpret what that relationship was actually like.
And a lot of it comes from one specific author
yeah.
That is interviewed. And I think he is the problem with this kind of interpretation, whereas NPR did a much less sensationalistic view,
right?
Where they just gave you more of the facts. They gave you the opinions of the grandchildren based on the stories they heard, and they had the autobiographer who was very clear about things like this is what we know and this is what we don't know and this is what people try to think about, but really there isn't any evidence of that written or oral or beyond the comic art. But I think this series is very guilty of, the modern perception where if you have any single thing that is taboo, you have to embellish it with even more taboo content,
Right.
So, yes, they had a, multiple spousal household that had children with both women from the same father and lived happily in the same household, and then after Marston died from cancer, continued to live together in a happy household, from what we can tell and from what all the children and grandchildren say.
Yeah. Depicting a lifestyle of his, specifically in the 20s and 30s?
Yeah, the 20s through the 40s and onward, yeah. I think he died in the 50s there.
Yeah, depicting that as the type of relationship that he had with these two women is going to naturally basically be like the most sensationalist thing that you could do with this guy.
Yeah, and I think particularly from the modern view where we do have so much mystery wrapped up in it, we do have the modern interpretation where you can go on the internet and look at things far worse than what was depicted, so to speak.
Easily.
I think people, particularly that author I was thinking of, are embellishing a little bit too much to be sensationalist and like associate one taboo activity with another,
Yeah,
you had,
definitely.
but I think we associate these kind of taboo activities like polygamy, and we say, well, if they were okay doing this, clearly they must have been doing all these other taboo activities sexually because they're all sexual deviants, because that's not the way a household is run in a traditional home,
Right.
So
It's like if they don't have like that basic moral fiber of it being a one man, one woman thing, then clearly there were no rules.
yeah. So I think there's a little bit of that being embellished in the story, and I think the
Yeah.
truth is probably much more tame. He probably did have real feelings for his wife, but his wife was more career oriented and didn't want to have to raise kids and stuff, And then he, got his attention drawn to this other very independent woman who offered something else that he wasn't getting from the wife, who was a busybody and wanted an independent career. And she
Yeah.
was willing to be this stay-at-home assistant and, partner, and probably supported him in emotional ways that the other wife couldn't.
Yeah.
And
It's willing to be what the other woman wasn't necessarily wanting from that relationship.
And obviously, he contributed something to the relationship because neither one denied him.
Right.
Both of them stayed with him and seemed to do so pretty happily, and both had kids at the same time with him,
Yeah.
both were pregnant at the same time, So clearly they all got along and they all understood, what the dynamic was and what the relationship was. And I think that's what makes it a unique story, not the nonsense about him brainwashing kids with bondage and, all this kind of nonsense that, maybe there was a little bit of that too there, there's a part in the series where they talk about the percentage breakdown of panels.
Right.
Where, like, Shazam would get tied up 7% of the panels, where Wonder Woman would be tied up over a fourth of the panels,
Yeah.
So, okay,
it
I
seemed
get it.
a bit disproportionate, sure.
But you also have to remember that Wonder Woman's main tool was the lasso of truth that was unbreakable.
Right.
So, Shazam didn't go around carrying a lasso everywhere. Yeah, so maybe it was just more convenient from a narrative standpoint. And
Right.
they show some of the tied up scenes, and yes, from a modern perspective, that looks like something sexual, but I'm pretty sure in the 20s and 30s, it was probably a little bit less so, 40s.
Yeah.
Probably a lot less so.
It probably, I think, was more in line with the classic, like, twirling mustache villain and, like, the damsel in this case
Yeah.
being tied up to, like, a railroad. And it's like there's nothing sexual about that, but
Yeah.
she is in fact being tied up.
So, personally, early review for this series, this miniseries, take everything with a grain of salt. They do give you really good and cool information in there.
Yeah.
Particularly towards the end. It seems like they get a little bit more factual towards the end and a little bit more reflective towards the end. But the beginning, the first half is always, for both of them, much
Yeah.
more sensational. And
It's like we got to grab your attention with this thing that's going to make you think like, "Oh my god, really? What? Oh, I have to see where this goes."
Yeah, so there you have it, folks. And then the following episode, the third episode, was about the establishment and the fight for the rights for Superman,
Yeah.
which,
with,
for those unfamiliar, was created in Cleveland, Ohio,
yeah,
right here in the
with
mid Old West.
yeah, Siegel and Schuster. I'm pretty sure Cleveland was their inspiration for Metropolis.
Yep.
Or at least, Cleveland back then.
Back when it had life.
Yeah. Before their economy was based on LeBron James.
At least we're not Detroit.
We're not Detroit.
But
Oh.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching those other two episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully you can catch them too, or just watch them with me. I don't care. You can come over. We can party.
Hey.
But
Comic book history party.
yeah, I highly recommend it. Check it out. And next up, we have some less thrilling news. Kick-Ass creator Mark Miller and his artist John Romita Jr. have announced that their new Kick-Ass title will be featuring a pretty big but not unusual for the times, especially coming from Marvel,
Right.
change. Dave Zuzki, for those who have been keeping up with Kick-Ass, who is the teenage Jewish kid from New York who took up the mantle of kick-ass with no combat experience and
He was just a kid.
was a terrible vigilante who hit girls saved often.
Yeah, it was he was just a kid with a couple of sticks and a heart for justice.
And it was a fun, entertaining book. But since he stepped down, Mark Miller and John Romita Jr. have decided to replace him, same universe apparently, replace him with Patience Lee, who is a 30-year-old black single mother of 2 children who lives in New Mexico, is an Army veteran. This is also coinciding with Mark Miller's signing of the rights for his Miller World books to Netflix. So, again, we've harped on this so many times, it makes my eyes water.
But we're going to say it again.
If you want to diversify your book or your cast, or you want to do something diverse with a character, make a new character.
Please.
This is nonsense. This is not what Kick-Ass is. Why would this woman who lives in New Mexico be running around in a neon green suit and yellow boots with sticks? Again, having military experience and having 2 kids at home. Why is she running around fighting some sort of crime? I would guess something related to the cartel in New Mexico.
Most likely.
Of all places, why New Mexico? Of all people, why a 30-year-old single mother?
This would literally make more sense if she tragically lost her children, decided to take up a gun because of her military experience, and just became a female Punisher.
But no.
But no.
Neon green suit, yellow boots, still has the kids on the image that was advertised. She's covered in blood in the green suit, and her boots have blood all over them, and she's kissing her daughter goodnight.
And she still has the sticks.
And yes,
of all the things you could have chosen to fight a war against what's probably going to be the cartel, you decided to take sticks.
She must have been a pogue, man.
Oh.
Person other than Grunt, for those not in the know. Why would she fight with sticks? The one thing she's not trained to use.
Oh, like I heard about this kid up in New York who's been he's been doing a good job at crime fighting, right?
I don't know if Mark Miller's been to New Mexico at all. There's really not
what the hell
anywhere to run
there?
around. Yeah, you realize it's a flat desert for the most part. There's some mountains in there, Sierra Nevadas and stuff, but for the most part, it's just kind of flat one-story buildings across the board, spread out over a huge area because New Mexico is gigantic.
And did we mention thinly populated?
And I would imagine cartel or any other criminals there would have long-range rifles.
Yeah.
And you're going to run in there with sticks, wearing a neon green suit without the city environment to protect you. Like, you can't hide behind a wall because the street's like, 20 feet away from the door.
Right.
It's like these buildings are spread out. They're not like New York City where they're all packed together.
And there's maybe a couple of blocks before you're driving in the middle of the desert. Again.
So I have
because it's New Mexico.
I have no idea how they're going to make this story make any kind of sense. Again, we're reading a preview before the actual thing. Maybe in practice it'll be like that for a reason, to make it more humorous or something. But it's just so ridiculous, and it reeks of the Marvel aesthetic that has been happening recently. And again, this is when Marvel Icon is losing the Kick-Ass title, and it's going to Image Comics.
Yeah.
So it's coming straight from Marvel properties, Disney properties, which has had a record recently with people like Riri Williams of just ripping off another character to make them more diverse and throwing them in there like it's no big deal. Riri Williams being an Iron Man who is credited with everything but did absolutely nothing except steal shit.
Right.
She stole shit.
She
That's
stole
her
shit
story.
that she somehow managed to get to work.
And she's applauded for it.
And she's been made to be a hero because, like, we just need someone with her face. That's all we need. We don't even need her personality or anything. We just need her face.
Yeah. So hopefully there's good context for this. I can't imagine how there could be at all, especially in the same universe, like the same like continuity.
I'm
Like,
so worried.
Why would this 30-year-old single mother
It
be taking on the identity of a little teenage Jewish boy from New York who's going around getting his ass kicked every day?
right. It's like Kick-Ass is a name that's ironic. It's like in the history of like his entire book, I don't think he's kicked a single ass.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure all of that goes to Hit Girl, which, why aren't we just doing a Hit Girl book?
That would be a wonderful idea.
Just like the
And
character's already there.
Apparently, the rumor was for a long time that Hit Girl was going to train a new person to be the new Kick-Ass or a new type of vigilante that was like Kick-Ass or something.
Right. Which
Why,
would make sense.
Why would
Like, why are we
they
just
go to
going,
New
like,
Mexico with a 30-year-old single mother of two?
It's like, unless she somehow lost her husband to violent crime, I see absolutely no reason
But
why
even-
she would do this.
Even then, why is she not using a fucking gun?
Why isn't she just calling the police?
New Mexico's pretty lax with their gun laws.
Yeah, and also...
She's an Army veteran.
Yeah.
She should at least know how to shoot. Again, if she was a pogue, maybe not.
Yeah.
but she knows how to handle a rifle at least.
Yeah, that's basic training.
Why
Also,
why is she fighting in a green suit with sticks
why
created by a teenage Jewish boy from New York?
why is she doing that as a single fucking parent?
Where does she find the time? Don't you have a job?
How do you pay rent?
How are you raising two children and working a job and kicking ass, quote unquote, probably getting your ass kicked
Oh yeah, this is
on
like
a regular
Pogue.
basis?
It's like at what point do you sleep?
I don't know.
There's so many questions. I have
So
too many questions about it, and I don't think they're going to get answered anytime soon in a satisfactory way.
yeah, and I have a sneaking suspicion that this is just going to get applauded relentlessly by the media. Oh, you took your character and made it diverse and gave it children and depth and dynamic. Like, no, that's not depth and dynamic. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. It doesn't make sense.
That
doesn't
is,
make any sense.
could someone
And
please?
it's not a new character. It's just putting
It's the same one,
putting-
but with like a
forcing
different situation.
diverse profile into an existing character.
Yeah. It. Ugh.
And in this case, it's extremely egregious because it just, you know, anybody can wear an Iron Man suit. I get it. You know, anybody can carry a shield and call themselves Captain America. You know,
Anyone can carry a shield and try to call
anybody
themselves
can
Captain
have an
America.
experimental accident. You know, but
It could happen
but
to anyone, sure.
Why would this single mother of two, who's 30 years old, be running around in New Mexico fighting crime with sticks?
It sounds
on
more
the-
ridiculous every time we bring that up.
Based on the actions of a teenage Jewish kid from New York City.
Again, mind you, was not successful.
None of this makes sense. Why?
It's like, oh, that kid didn't know how to do it. I do, because I've been in the military. I know how to use sticks. No, you don't. They don't teach that.
I don't know.
Because that's dumb.
Maybe Mark Miller's just losing his mind. I don't know. We'll see what happens. The art looks good, so credit to John Romita Jr. At least the art looks cool. But
yeah,
I don't know what the hell they're trying to do here.
That's him making the best of a bad situation.
And next up we have Justice League, the movie we reviewed. Check out our review. It's not great.
Mm-mm.
Justice League has opened up to a quote-unquote disappointing launch, weekend grossing $95 million domestically and $185 million internationally, according to Forbes. It is, according to Forbes, the worst opening for the entire collection of DCEU films, including Man of Steel, BVS, Suicide Squad, and Wonder Woman, To give perspective, Justice League is estimated to have cost over $300 million to produce, not including marketing. So with most of these superhero films, they're pretty much guaranteed the opening weekend to make their money back.
Yeah.
Or at least come damn close. In this case, they're lingering, like $30 million behind what they are estimated to have spent on it before marketing. And marketing can usually add about 50% of that onto it, depending on how they do it. And we've seen heavy marketing every day.
Yeah.
Where, action figures, toys, posters, commercials on everything. I know watching football, it's just constant Justice League commercials, internet ads, you name it, audio ads. They're advertising heavily, and they're having terrible, terrible results compared to their previous films.
Yeah.
I have two things to say about this. One, please keep it low. Don't see this movie. Please, don't see it multiple times. Please, I beg you. Because every dollar you give to them sends them the message that, let's keep doing this.
Yeah.
Let's keep releasing terrible quality movies. Let's keep making a CGI upper lip for Superman because he doesn't feel like shaving his mustache. Let's still have Ben Affleck delivering lifeless lines because he doesn't want to be fucking Batman anymore and has said so publicly. And let's have this Gal Gadot who prioritizes her modeling career over being Wonder Woman, who's the most iconic female superhero
of all time. Yeah.
Period. And could be has already become, to an extent, thanks to the movie Wonder Woman, one of the coolest and most iconic and biggest inspirations for young girls,
Yeah.
Not only to like comic books, but to pursue being a strong, powerful woman, in the world.
Yeah.
And it's just...
It's so many steps back for her, honestly.
So I beg people, please don't see this movie. It's not unenjoyable. You might have a good time as long as you turn off your brain completely and you ignore the goofy CGI moments and the awkward Superman mustache issues and weird, poorly written lines.
There is one way to enjoy this movie from beginning to end, and that's to roast the shit out of it.
Which we did a little bit.
Oh yeah.
But we showed a picture on the review, I think. We showed a picture on the review of the attendance we had on opening night.
Oh.
And it was not good. It was not good. Which is promising to me. The producers from WB Studios has said that they think it's more because of the holiday, which, to their credit, it's probably a little bit true. It's the weekend. They launched the weekend before Thanksgiving. They're probably not going to have a lot of viewers the weekend of Thanksgiving because of Black Friday and people running around to stores trying to get deals and stuff.
Right.
Not really interested in movies. But doesn't that just make your outlook even worse? Because opening weekend is where most movies make all their money. And then from there on out, it's, a spattering of 5 million, 8 million, 7 million. And just eventually it declines to a point where it's, not even worth keeping in theaters.
The biggest issue with that is that not only are we very clearly seeing some incompetence as far as crafting of these stories, but we're now, as a result of that being pointed out, we're seeing some incompetence in the way of their scheduling as far as when is the best time to release this movie.
Absolutely.
And for them to...
And I think they were doing their best to try to avoid Star Wars on one end
and then Thor Ragnarok on the other. Oh my god.
So they really had
they were shafted.
They had nothing they could really do if they wanted to continue releasing at this period, which is ridiculous because they refused to delay this movie for the several reshoots they did. And, allowing Henry Cavill to fucking finish
filming.
Mission Impossible so he can shave off the goofy mustache for the reshoots. You could have delayed it a month and probably made more money because nobody would be releasing in January.
Right.
Everybody would have their post-Christmas money, their gift money or whatever. Kids would want to go see the movie, and you wouldn't have to worry about Star Wars or Thor Ragnarok because they're a distant memory now.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you delay it a month and help yourselves out? Instead, you tried to force it into this little period in between Thor and Star Wars, and now not only because of the previous quality of your movies, which has discouraged viewers,
Yeah.
you and all the rumors leading up about the reshoots because the movie was too like bad and the CG was bad.
They were. There's no undoing that now.
You have all these issues, and you have directors leaving and coming because of personal issues and whatever else, and actors saying they don't want to be part of these franchises anymore, and just
yeah.
and now you're stuck, and you'll probably make your money back. Let's face it, after not only the movie release but also Blu-ray, DVD sales, and sales to Netflix or something like that for streaming, and TV channels that'll probably buy up rights to it. They'll make their money back for sure. But hopefully this is an indication, as long as people keep staying away from it, to their studio that, hey, obviously our quality is not up to snuff, and the allure, the appeal of seeing these characters on screen has kind of lost their weight now because we kind of blew all our load trying to rush all these things out and doing it in poor fashion. Not to say that the actors doing it are poor, but the way the context and the story was written out and how they were all forced into all these things were forced into Batman versus Superman and Justice League.
It seems like they're just playing catch up, like financial catch up, and this is the result.
Yeah. So hopefully this sends the message to them. They have 3 movies slated for production right now. They have Aquaman that's supposed to come out December of next year. They have Wonder Woman who's supposed to come out around the same time. And then they have their Shazam movie the following year, supposedly. They have a Cyborg movie, 2019. And then they have a Green Lantern Corps movie slated for 2020. This is way too many movies for a studio that has been repeatedly releasing inferior products, and for a studio that has not one but several actors expressing their concerns about staying on contract for these movies. You have a bunch of actors that want to bail, that want to jump ship. You have directors dealing with their personal issues, so clearly you're not going to have the same directors going forward. You have a bad established, character arcs for these people, and it's really hard for future writers. Even if you do everything right going forward, it's going to be hard to draw an audience to your movies
because of the past
and what you have to do to stay within the continuity, to not stray away, unless you want to do the whole X-Men thing and just pretend it never happened.
Flashpoint, we're looking at you.
But even then, you have to recast,
Yeah.
You need to recast at least a handful of these characters. And people, Joss Whedon came in, again, check out our review. Joss Whedon came in and add his Whedonism to these movies.
Which it's very apparent which ones have it and which ones don't.
I personally don't dislike the Whedonism. I think it's a welcome addition, but it doesn't mesh with
what's been established.
What's been established for this universe. So even the stuff that was good in this universe is kind of forgotten about and destroyed and replaced with the Whedonisms, which and sometimes are good and sometimes are really bad.
Yeah.
And I think now you have the dichotomy where you have the previous loyalist fans for these DCEU movies that would ride or die with these movies, and Zack Snyder, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Now they're upset because their movie seems like a bottom of the barrel Marvel movie now instead of the unique DC movie that they were hoping for.
Right.
And then the fans like us are caught in this weird dynamic where we're like, none of this makes sense within the context anymore.
Yeah.
Not that it made a whole lot of sense to begin with. And it's really alienating and a little weird, and the story's a little weak. Again, this movie's enjoyable enough if you turn your brain completely off and ignore the bad CG.
Yeah.
But that's asking a lot of your audience.
Yes.
Your audience should not be forced to turn off their brains like we did for Thor Ragnarok, similar situation.
Yeah.
But at least Thor Ragnarok had good CG.
Yes, it did.
and
Thor Ragnarok
fun
CG
acting,
was
fun characters,
they have gotten so good with their CG that I believed in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, a de-aged Kurt Russell. That is how good they've gotten.
Their aging technology is really good.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
it for Pirates and Star Wars,
Yeah, it's like they are on point with that.
They've gotten rid of a lot of that uncanny valley,
Yeah.
Still there a little bit, but not too much.
A little bit. But DC's not there.
Yeah, DC is not even close. Whatever animation and CG studios they're using, they just need to stop. And I think part of it is that they're just asking them way too much. Because if you see the production for these movies, Avengers, they'll create a whole set. They'll film on a street from time to time. They'll use ropes and pulleys and, real cars and all these things.
Yeah.
DC, they put a square block and then green everywhere. And then Henry Cavill has fucking green and little bubbles on his fucking mustache, and he's got a CG cape.
Yeah, they're just like trying to paint a picture way too much.
I feel like what Snyder and these DC movies in general, Wonder Woman was the least egregious.
Yeah.
I didn't see Suicide Squad because I refuse to believe that is not a good movie based on the glorious trailer it had.
I swear to God, you one of these days we're gonna put an end to this bit that you keep doing.
I won't.
I swear.
I won't ruin my belief based on that Bohemian Rhapsody trailer that this is a wonderful, great quality movie.
Well, one day you'll see.
I refuse to believe anything ill of Will Smith.
You will see the truth, which will basically just affirm everything that you already believe about everything DCEU.
But yeah, Man of Steel had really good moments, really good parts, and the story wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But they have that fucking tornado scene, and then they have Superman destroying an entire city filled with millions of people, and his solution to the end problem is push harder, which is every Superman story. It always starts off good, and then the end, the end thing he has to do to save the world is push harder, punch harder. It's why couldn't he do that in the first place?
Right.
I don't know.
It's an issue of... Honestly, it's an issue of creativity with that character. And here's the thing that I've noticed with all of these movies. They're all pretty. For some reason, the director of photography really knows how to establish a shot and a scene, but their writing staff doesn't know how to justify going from one to the other.
I mean, even that's kind of debatable because their scenes are always cut really awkwardly. It's really awkward transitions, like the Wonder Woman standing on top of the, Lady of Justice thing in the movie. Not a spoiler because it happens at the beginning.
Yeah, it's in the trailers.
But there's really awkward transitions with both the music and the cinematography. And then because every set is completely CG, they never have shadows. You always notice in the trailer, if you look in the trailer, there's a perfect example of it, where you have Aquaman, Cyborg, Wonder Woman, and Flash standing in a line by the Superman monument, and they're on that white pavilion, and there's plenty of sunlight, of course, all CG. Everything in the shot is CG except for them.
And none of them have shadows.
Except Cyborg's suit. Cyborg's suit and everything else is CG. And they have no shadow at all. Not even a little bit of shadow.
It's fucking weird.
That's how every scene looks. Every scene has those flaws that poor or really rushed CG has, where they just make the errors of just your thought process.
Yeah.
Oh, they're in an open sunlight area. They should probably have a shadow of some sort.
Yeah.
Because it looks really artificial when they don't. Because your brain recognizes that immediately. Your brain is something's wrong here. And you see these flaws immediately. And you're like, oh, this is all CG. It looks bad.
These are rookie mistakes.
Yeah. So hopefully our audience and everybody else will listen to us and heed our advice. If you want to see this movie, that's great. And I hope when you see it, you enjoy it. But don't see it in theaters. Because when you see it in theaters, even though it's probably the least egregious between BVS and Man of Steel, and probably Suicide Squad, based on what I've heard, because I refuse to believe it's a bad movie, based on the trailer.
Every time, I swear to God.
I refuse to watch it. It still commits those same crimes, where it's just not logical. Just poor lines, some of the actors just giving up, clearly. Ben Affleck especially, I think, in this movie. It's just, it's not up to quality, and they rushed too many things when they should have just taken the long-term track and, milked it for all it's worth. You don't, yeah, you're going to make a lot of money initially, but once that initial money's gone, that initial allure is gone, nobody's going to come see your movies anymore because you're just giving them shit quality movies,
Yeah, there's actually a thing from very early on into that movie that it's what I called the tagline of this movie. This poor person, most likely homeless, just sitting on a street corner with a little thing of cardboard that says, "I tried."
That really was like the key message of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Again, they did some things better, did a lot of things worse, and there's just a lot more worse in it. Not as severe, but a lot more of it. So.
Superman's mustache.
His upper lip is horrible.
Every goddamn...
It's really bad. That's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Rest assured. Don't see it, please. I'm begging you.
Don't do it.
If you see it after it's out of theaters, because that's all they care about. And our final news item. The video game Marvel Heroes, a popular online RPG series, is ceasing operation and support due to Disney opting out of its partnership with the developer Gazillion Studios. And a lot of people are angry and probably rightfully demanding refunds for all their in-game purchases.
Yeah.
A lot of how this game works, from what I understand, is you get a certain character, a certain number of characters to start out with, and then you can buy like new costumes and more characters, or you can work forever, like any kind of online RPG nowadays.
Yeah.
To earn the character, but of course it probably takes forever, and it comes in like random loot boxes and stuff.
The grind, as we call it.
So, have you played this?
I have.
What do you
actually.
think of
it? It seemed very much like basically a reskinned version of Diablo 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's like you have your basic set of skills that expand as you progress in the game, and there's a end game part of it where you just keep leveling and get more things added to your character.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems like there's quite a bit of game, but honestly, I got through it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And like all of the other stuff that they were continually adding never really seemed like enough for what I was putting into it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised by any of this stuff. Basically, Disney has the power now to say yay or nay to anything it really wants to, and there's nothing you can really do to stop it because they own everything.
Yeah. That
Warner Brothers and DC is probably the one thing they don't own on this planet at this point.
Give it time.
Like between Disney and Google, maybe Microsoft,
God,
there's not going to be a whole lot left to own.
Yeah. Everything else is going to be licensed out.
And this isn't an official news item, but I thought I'd put it in there. If you haven't noticed, Tesla has now released a brand new semi-truck that it will be putting in production next year. And they look
right?
they are able to be automated, just like the Tesla cars, where you just set a follow distance and tell it to stay in the lines, and it just drives. And,
interesting.
in addition to everything for Tesla being awesome, just because it's cool, they look an awful lot like the trucks in Logan.
Is that right?
And I'm not sure if the trucks in Logan were based on those, Tesla models, and I suspect they were, but they looked exactly like the automated semi-trucks that were in Logan. So...
I'm not sure if this is the future I signed up for, but we're gonna make the best of it that we can.
And I gotta think that's a little scary because a lot of people, especially in America, make money driving semi-trucks.
Yeah,
If they make a situation where you don't need the driver, it's not at that point yet. You still need to have a driver there monitoring things, But if you get to a point where you don't need a driver anymore, That can get creepy real fast.
Oh yeah.
Just like in Logan, and you're gonna have a lot of people out of jobs, a lot of people, good paying jobs too.
Yeah, that's going the full automation route is a really good way to basically have a new crisis
Yeah.
on your hands.
That's why I think former President Obama, in his exit interview was talking about how automation is probably going to be the biggest threat to the future of any kind of first world country. Because eventually you're going to reach a point where so many things are automated, there's just nothing left to go around. And the things that are left to go around will be in such low demand because everybody's doing them.
Yeah.
You won't be paid shit for it. And you're going to end up with a need for most people to need some kind of universal basic income just to live and just to get by because so many things are automated. And, and you're going to have the elites of the elites that own all these things and run all these things, and you might have your handful of doctors and stuff, but not everybody can be a doctor, you know?
Right. It's definitely going to require some like restructuring of how society works.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I wonder if there's going to be a comic book coming along before too long that kind of experiments with this idea. If I were at like Image or Marvel or DC or any of these companies, you know, you name it, Lion Forge, I don't care.
Oh yeah.
I would be hopping all over this.
Oh,
I'd be creating some kind of dystopian, you know, future where there's the elites of the elites, and then there's the broke fucks that just work menial jobs just to get grain, you know.
Oh.
And the pit hole that used to be, you know, very well established middle class, you know.
Yeah, that's the divide deepens.
Not directly comic related, but very interesting nonetheless. And again, they look exactly like the trucks from Logan. So.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Future is here. And that, my friends, is the news.
So, what books are we going to be hitting this week?
Well, Emery, I thought you'd never ask. All right. From Marvel Comics, we have All New Wolverine, number 27, Legacy. Still going.
Damn it.
We have Black Panther, number 167, Legacy. We have Cable, number 151, Legacy.
Son of a bitch.
We have Captain Marvel, number 126, Legacy.
Quit it.
We have Generation X, number 9. We have Guardians of the Galaxy, the Telltale series, number 5. Now, I still have to play the Guardians one, but I just got the first season of the Batman Telltale series, so look forward to a potential review coming from that pretty soon here.
Oh, yeah.
We have Invincible Iron Man, number 594, Legacy.
Quit it, Marvel.
We have Luke Cage, number 167, Legacy. We have Monsters Unleashed, number 8, Legacy.
How is that a legacy title?
I don't understand either. Why does Monsters Unleashed need a legacy?
We have not had that before. That is a new thing. Come on.
We have Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, number 25, Legacy.
Come on.
Another one.
Damn
where
it.
Do we really need a legacy comic for this?
No, it's not old enough.
We have Punisher, The Platoon, number 3. We have Royals, number 11, Legacy. We have Silver Sable, The Wild Pack, number 36, Legacy.
Oh, come on. Barely anyone reads that.
We have Spider-Man / Deadpool, number 24. We have Star Wars, number 39.
Oh, it just says Star Wars. Oh, thank God.
Yeah, for once. No long subtitle there. We have Thanos, number 13. Legacy.
Oh, come on. He doesn't... He has never had his own book.
We have The Amazing Spider-Man, Renew Your Vows, number 13. Legacy.
What the...
And I just want to give it...
For Spider-Man, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It deserves a legacy book.
Yeah.
You've already commented on this being a cool topic and a cool dynamic.
Yeah. Renew Your Vows is... imagine if, like, basically the continuity from the 90s hadn't gone through what it went through in the 2000s. And Peter Parker, Mary Jane, get married, have a baby. Baby becomes a mutant, and basically dealing with the story of what happens when Spider-Man and his wife Spinneret take their child to the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters.
Yeah.
And the adventures that ensue from there.
Now, I want to give a shout out to this cover. It is not our cover of the week, unfortunately, but it is a solid cover, and I love what they did with the title integration.
Yeah.
They put the title of the book into the art in the background, so they made it like part of a sign that they're swinging past.
Yeah.
Really cool idea. Really good artwork. I love it. Unfortunately, there were better covers this week. It was a strong week for the regular covers. Not so
Yeah.
much for the variants, unfortunately.
With that said, that is a very innovative idea
Yeah.
that I don't think is done nearly enough in this day and age.
So I want to give a very, very loud shout out to Ryan Stegman, who did the regular cover for The Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows number 13, Legacy. We have X-Men Gold number 16,
Legacy. And that's it.
From DC Comics, we have Action Comics number 992. I harp on this all the time. I get you were trying to appeal to the older, more loyal comic book fans by bringing back the original numbering, but it makes it so hard to keep track of where they are in the stories, and nobody wants to pick up a book in the middle of a story and not be able to get the other books.
Right.
You know?
And now to make this we're almost batting 1,000 here.
Yeah.
What the
And these books are never one-off books anymore, you know. And that's probably a good thing because it makes for better stories when you draw things out a little bit.
Right.
But it's so hard for fans to keep track when you've taken a break for a little while from a book and you see a cover that's really cool and you look at the story concept and it sounds interesting and you want to hop back in, but you can't find the first issue or the second issue because you don't know where it started or where it ended.
Yeah.
You know?
And if you end up with that issue that's kind of in the middle, you're lost without any real
you have no
frame of
context,
reference.
you don't know
Yeah.
what has changed, and it's very confusing and off-putting. So
Yeah. That would be terribly
raw concept.
daunting.
I understand what they were doing. I applaud you. They did a lot of great changes, like the price changes, and they have like 2 versions of the more popular books, come out twice a month instead of once a month, and a lot of good things they did. But
Yeah.
they still have the giant rebirth banners, which are annoying because they take up so much of the cover art, and then you still have the the barcode on the front, which is just not acceptable at this point when Image has been doing without it for a long time, and several other books. Joe Benitez, of all people.
Yeah.
It's just small things you could help yourselves out with.
It's just
Next up, we have Batgirl number 17. We have Batman Beyond number 14. We have Blue Beetle number 15. We have Demon Hell is Earth number 1. We have Detective Comics number 969. We have Doomsday Clock number 1, which is the new big event they have going on with the crossover between DC Universe and Watchmen. We'll see how it goes.
I was like, I wouldn't mind having the question. Oh no, wait, no, they have Rorschach. I wouldn't mind having Dr. No, wait, they have Superman. I wouldn't mind Night Owl. I mean, wait, we have Batman. Why are we doing this again?
I don't know. It'll be interesting. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not caught up on their Watchmen stuff. I know that one of the blood-covered happy face pins were, Batman had it in the Batcave at some point, and I don't remember the context of it because I read it, years ago. I think a year, if not 2 years ago, when it happened. But
yeah,
I have no context for what's going on. Was it part of Convergence and I just didn't realize it, or what? But
yeah, some back reading to do for that.
it's an interesting concept. We'll see what happens there. And we have Gotham City Garage number 4. Don't read this book.
Don't do
We
it.
talked about it during our Does the Content Match the Drapes, and it did not.
Mm-mm.
It did not match the drapes.
Not even a little bit.
And this cover has a shirtless Nightwing with a blue thing tattooed on his chest.
It's just weird.
Wonderful. We have Harley Quinn number 32. We have Hellblazer Number 16, hashtag Save Constantine.
Hashtag Save Constantine.
We have Justice League of America, number 19. We have Looney Tunes, number 240. We have Nightwing, The New Order, number 4, if you like fascist Nightwing stories. We have Scooby-Doo Team Up, number 32. We have Suicide Squad, number 30. We have Teen Titans, number 14. We have The Flash, number 35. We have The Commandi Challenge, number 11, which, again, was being pushed pretty hard, I think, by Tom King there. Have you gotten a chance to look at it?
Not yet.
Yeah, me neither. It's just the covers don't look interesting to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I look at the covers and I'm like, oh, it looks like something like Planet of the Apes like, and I just...
It's like the covers and the premise. I
Yeah.
just... it's going to give me it's going to take me a minute to really get into that.
Next, we have The Rough and Ready Show, number 2. And we have Wonder Woman, number 35. From Image Comics, we have Angelic, number 3. We have Copperhead, number 16. We have Elephant Men, number 79. We have Gasolina, number 3. We have Genius Cartel, number 4. We have God Complex, number 2, which has a pretty nice cover too. Again, strong week for regular covers.
Oh, yeah.
Variants, not so much. Yeah. We have Redneck, number 7. We have Savage Dragon, number 228.
Ooh, that's one of my old faves.
We have Snot Girl, number 8. We have Underwinter, A Field of Feathers, number 2. We have Void Trip, number 1. We have Warframe, number 2, comic you've talked about in the past.
Yep, video game tie-in.
And that wraps up Image. From IDW, we have Popeye Classics, number 64. And a lot of variant covers.
Yep.
Weird Love, number 21. And that wraps up IDW. From Boom Studios, we have Big Trouble in Little China, Old Man Jack, number 3.
Yeah.
Probably a terrible comic, but whatever.
It's like old Jack Burton always says, hell.
We have Lumberjanes, number 44. We have Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, number 21. We have Rugrats, number 2. We have Skull Island, The Birth of Kong, number 4. Looks like the movie tie-in.
Yep.
We have Steven Universe, number 10. We have The Unsound, number 6. The previous issue of which was a previous cover of the week.
Yeah.
We have WWE, number 11. And that wraps up Boom Studios. From Titan Books, we have The Beautiful Death, number 3.
Hooray, they got one.
And that wraps up Titan Books. From Archie Comics, we have Archie and Me Comics Digest, number 2. We have Betty and Veronica Comics Double Digest, number 258. And that wraps up Archie. A lot of variants from the Riverdale TV show that they made based on Archie.
Yeah.
I've heard it's not bad.
Yeah, I just, for some reason, can't bring myself to watch it yet.
We have, from Dark Horse Comics, Angel, Season 11, number 11. We have Bank Shot, number 4. We have Department H, number 20. We have Sherlock Frankenstein and the Legion of Evil, number 2. We have Tomb Raider, Survivor's Crusade, number 1. And that wraps up Dark Horse. From Oni Press, we have Invader Zim, number 25. Doom, 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 doom. We have Made Men, number 3. So much. From Vertigo, we have Astro City, number 49. We have Doom Patrol, number 9. And we have a new title, Imaginary Fiends, number 1.
Ooh.
Yeah. From Aftershock Comics, we have Animosity, Evolution, number 2. We have Eleanor and the Egret, number 5. And we have Jimmy's Bastards, number 5. We're going to talk about this company this week just because one of the creators of one of the new books is doing a signing at one of our favorite comic book shops, The Laughing Ogre. So if you're in Columbus, Ohio or nearby, you should check it out and see if you can come by and get a signed comic from the creators. The first book I'm not familiar with is Infernacht, number 2. And then the book I am talking about is called Long Lost, number 1, which is actually inspired by a trip they took to Hocking Hills and had a creepy night in the woods with. Sounds like city people who were never in the woods to me, but if it inspires great concepts, more power to them.
Yeah.
So check that out, especially if you're a Central Ohio resident or nearby.
Yeah. Take inspiration where it finds you.
From Vault Comics, we have Maxwell's Demons, number 1. And that, my friends, wraps up the new releases. Be sure to pick them up at your local comic book shops.
Please remember to support your local comic book shops.
And on your digital devices of choice this week. Remember, they always come out on Wednesday, and we'll always give you the list before. Assuming we release on time, which we usually do. Out every Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's time to hand out the prestigious, nay life-changing award of cover and variant cover of the week. Unfortunately, due to the strong showing from the regular covers this week and the very, very weak showing from the variant covers this week, instead of having a variant cover of the week, we have chosen 2 regular covers of the week to applaud and appreciate. And then next week you can tune in again to find out if the content matched the drapes.
Yeah.
So, first up, we have Angel, Season 11, number 11.
That is quite the cover they got there.
The cover is illustrated by Scott Fisher. Now, for those that don't know, Angel is a character from Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Yeah, Angel, I remember that character as... It seemed like a cool, kind of niche character that kind of took on a life of its own.
Yeah.
And then eventually took on a show of its own.
Yeah.
And the show ran basically long enough for them to go 10 whole seasons, and people like it so much that it's been justified to have its own comic book series.
Yeah. And fun fact, a lot of Joss Whedon's success you have to thank for Buffy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is where he gets most of his acclaim and credibility.
Originally.
He, of course, he's done many things. Like Firefly.
He's done all the things.
Yeah, he's done Firefly. He's done Avengers 2, Age of Ultron.
Yep.
Yeah, he's been a busy man.
So normally, not that this being based on a TV show should hurt it, but I usually try to stray away from these things because to be in the know for does the content match the drapes, you really have to have some kind of knowledge about the show and whatever they're up to in the comic.
Yeah.
And they're on season 11 of this comic book, plus the TV show, which I watched a little bit of when I was a teenager, but I don't really remember it that well.
Yeah. I'm thinking that the season 11 means that if the show got a season 11, this would be it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things to catch up on there. So
yeah,
I try to avoid it.
Yeah, it takes a lot of prior knowledge in order to really get a good idea of this one.
But this week, I couldn't in good conscience ignore this cover.
Yeah.
Because the cover is excellent. It has a really cool vibe where it looks like Angel's kind of propped up on the backs of several other people, probably characters. And it's in this kind of limbo-looking world, and he's holding up this kind of mother-of-pearl upside-down planet.
Yeah.
And it's a little psychedelic, but very, very cool. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me a lot of those first entry levels in DMC.
Yeah.
By was it Ninja Theory?
Yeah, it was Ninja Theory that did that game.
So it has a very cool aesthetic, and I'm a big fan of it, and even the artwork. I mean, you can tell it was probably drawn digitally, on a digital pad or something.
Yeah.
But the colors are fantastic. The dynamic is fantastic. The people are drawn very well, especially for a comic that's just an extension of a TV show.
Yeah.
That's a lot of effort to put into a book that probably doesn't sell a whole lot.
I think the thing that strikes me the most is just the pose that he's doing to hold this up. It's very...
He's doing the Atlas pose.
Yes. Atlas holding the weight of the world on his shoulders, which is, if anyone's familiar with Angel, he does that a lot. Yeah. He definitely takes on the weight of the world.
So maybe I'll pick up the Amazing Spider-Man cover we gave credit to for Does the Content Match the Drapes? But this cover is excellent. It was probably my favorite of the week.
Oh, yeah.
Hands down. It's a great cover, and I would love to hang this if I was like a bigger Buffy fan or Angel fan,
Yeah.
But it looks like it's the penultimate issue of this season of comics. So if you're a fan of Angel or Buffy, you should probably pick it up. Next up, our second cover of the week goes to Imaginary Fiends, #1 from Vertigo.
Ooh.
Now, this is a book we saw a preview of not too long ago and thought it was really cool looking.
Yeah.
And now we finally have it, and I can't wait to pick this book up and check it out because it looks really, really cool.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It looks like it's going to be a big part of the new Vertigo relaunch they're trying to push into next year.
Yeah.
Where DC's finally going to let go of some of their Vertigo titles and put them back on Vertigo where they belong, where they can be more adult.
Yeah, it's definitely got a whole lot of spooky going on, which is exactly what I want from Vertigo.
It's kind of, I like the artwork too, because the way it's drawn and the way it's colored looks very much like the old kind of fairy tale panels, like the fairy tale pages you'd see.
Yeah.
And those very stylized, fairy tale books.
Yeah, it made me actually in a couple of ways think of the Sandman.
Oh, yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. The cover is illustrated by Richard Pace. So shout out to Richard Pace. And this book's written by Tim Seeley, who's done a lot of really good DC work in the past, especially in the New 52. So definitely recommend you check that out. I'm going to be picking it up, and you can look for our...
Does the content match the drapes?
Brief review.
Yeah.
and impressions next week on Did the Content Match the Drapes? Man, it's just such a cool cover.
So good.
Remember, if you watch our YouTube channel, you can always see this stuff right on the video. If you don't watch our YouTube channel, you can use the resource we use to see the new releases every week, which is freshcomics.us. Make sure you type that .us and not .com. Freshcomics.us, and then you click New Comics This Week, and you can also check the releases for pretty much any period of time. That isn't distant future. So they do a great job. I don't know who's responsible for freshcomics.us, but they're a wonderful resource, and they make our jobs a lot easier.
Yes.
So definitely check them out if you're not watching our video and you're listening to us on Stitcher or iTunes. And we really appreciate it, no matter what format you're using. And for our new friends out there, this is the part of the show where we each discuss a topic of our choosing about the world of comics. Emery, what is your topic this week?
My topic this week is, and this is something that I think became very accentuated with the release of the Justice League movie, and that is the nature of the rivalry between the different fandoms of comic books. Specifically, but not limited to, Marvel and DC.
So, Thor Ragnarok versus Justice League. Which one was the worst movie?
Who? Justice League.
Yeah, it's probably Justice League. I'm the DC fanboy, and I'm still agreeing it's probably Justice League.
I'm the Marvel fanboy, and I wish that wasn't true. Yeah, it's the type of thing that if you read any comment section having to do with a certain comic book company or like specifically Marvel stuff or DC stuff, if you see what's commonly termed as a DC fanboy on a Marvel video, it is not uncommon for them to make comments that basically try to downplay what they just watched from Marvel
Yeah.
and kind of like upsell what is about to come out from DC.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa, like easily.
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic, especially in an industry that a lot of people beyond the movies think is shrinking.
Yeah.
You would think you would want to support your comic book industry in any fashion as much as possible.
Yeah.
You know, as much as your conscience will allow you to, you know.
Yeah. Or as much as your wallet will allow you to.
Also true.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a DC fanboy. I just, with the exception of maybe Wolverine, I typically gravitate towards the DC characters a lot more and the DC aesthetic a lot more. It's just my personal preference, you know, but I don't not enjoy X-Men or Spider-Man or any kind of Marvel books. And I always find it really silly when people go at each other's throats, you know, whether it's on the internet or, you know, in conversation or whatever. Like, we have plenty of, you know, fun discussions about these things, and sometimes we disagree, you know, but that doesn't mean like I dislike Marvel Comics all of a sudden, or I hate them and see them as some kind of inferior publishing company or something, you know. Both companies have made mistakes in the past. Both companies have had great runs and great, you know, writers and artists, and they usually poach from each other a lot. I think with DC and Marvel in particular, I think a lot of their rivalry comes down to early sabotaging of each other, and a lot of ripping off of the other one.
Yeah.
You know, DC was notorious for kind of underhanded door deals where they're kind of using their mother company to take advantage of Marvel and kind of keep them knocked down a peg.
Yeah.
On the opposite side of the spectrum, Marvel unabashedly ripped off DC constantly.
Oh, yeah.
So there are exceptions, of course, where it went the other way around. Submariner and Aquaman, for example. Submariner, most people don't know, came first. You know, it came before Aquaman and is very similar to Aquaman. Granted, Aquaman probably has a more iconic status and is more recognizable. And
because of Super Friends and Justice League.
In my opinion, has a cooler name and a cooler outfit. I'm not a fan of the Submariner elf ears and underpants,
which have changed over time.
Sometimes.
I mean, he doesn't have to hide.
Then you have the dynamic where Submariner is like often depicted as a kind of villain sometimes.
Yeah.
Not exclusively, but you know.
It's like he's got some douchey aspects.
Yeah. But for a long time, DC was trying to undercut Marvel because, especially with that initial run by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, they were releasing very time-appropriate comics that weren't quite as corny, that had real character concerns like, you know, Spider-Man being poor and X-Men being marginalized by society, and added a depth to comics that DC and Marvel both had not previously really established, and Marvel hit that hard first.
Yeah.
DC caught up eventually, but then both companies kind of backtracked once the Comics Code Authority gained ground in Congress, and they all accepted it to try to avoid, you know, the nonsense that was, you know, the more conservative times in the United States, and unfortunately.
It was a dark time back then.
And it almost killed the industry. And thankfully, it didn't succeed, but it came darn close to
almost
killing the comic book industry altogether. So I think a lot of that feudal nature comes from just several generations of pointing fingers. You know, DC, you know, was screwing us over, and we were, you know, eating fucking white bread every night just by itself, trying to feed our artists and our writers because Stan Lee was taking all the credit, and DC's publishers were, you know, undercutting all of our company's deals, and we couldn't sell in certain stores because DC's mother company was taking care of everything, you know. And then on the other hand, DC's pointing at them going, well, you're ripping off all of our characters, all of your powers and characters and unique ideas are coming from our characters. You're just making a different story for them and coloring them a different color,
It's like, oh, we're just doing it better. Excelsior.
Yeah, exactly.
True believer.
I created that. I created Batman. Excelsior. That documentary really
Oh, yeah.
might have changed my opinion of Stan Lee, unfortunately.
I mean, it didn't do him any favors.
He's still a legend, but man,
yeah.
I didn't realize how...
Sometimes you got to do dark things to, really make a name for yourself. And Stan Lee, I don't think, was any stranger to that, unfortunately.
Well, he succeeded.
Yeah, he did. But yeah, there's definitely some history there.
Yeah.
Some bad blood. But then, in this current day and age, you then see things like tweets from Marvel, like saying, like, so sad to see you guys go, like in response to DC moving their headquarters all the way over to LA.
Yeah. You don't belong in LA.
Yeah.
Go back home.
Yeah, please go back.
But yeah, there is, I would say the comic book industry outside of the movie world,
Yeah.
as it currently stands, is far less divisive than it used to be. I think people now are just kind of, just soliciting better quality content from their comics. And I think there is a little bit of divisiveness, especially when there was New 52 and the events prior to Secret Wars and all that stuff and with Marvel, where Marvel was doing a bunch of the more progressive things and getting patted on the back for it.
Yeah.
To an okay extent then, but now it's getting kind of egregious.
Like out of hand.
And DC was kind of sticking to their old ways, if not experimenting with them a little bit in the New 52. And then the fans seemed to take alliances again, where the DC fans were like, everything in Marvel is light and cartoony, and everybody's all happy and nothing ever goes wrong, and
there's no stakes.
All these characters keep getting replaced with diverse versions of themselves, for no good reason, and the writing's really shallow and the stories are really shallow. At least with DC, you're getting more adult concepts, you're getting a little bit more depth and darker stories. Again, these are subjective things, but that was kind of the argument being made back and forth. And then Marvel would say, oh, the DC books are way too dark and they take themselves too seriously to an almost goofy extent, because these are costume superheroes trying to be serious about these things. And
yeah, and you guys are going back to old numbering.
Yeah,
they're near the thousands.
The argument would be like, yeah, they refuse to change. They're not updating fast enough with the times. Yeah,
and so they're going to seem old because they are old.
And their heroes have corny names like Superman and Wonder Woman. That's usually the argument that goes back and forth.
Oh yeah.
And I would say like both sides have some validity to it. And honestly, it's probably why I'm more of a DC fan, because I don't mind the goofy names as long as the characters have a little bit more depth, I guess, in those contexts. Again, all subjective.
Oh yeah,
there's obviously many Marvel examples that have plenty of depth, if not more.
Yeah, I will say this: it is, in terms of the comics coming out today, becoming just a little more difficult to remain a Marvel fan, and it gets even more either difficult or easier depending on how you view the departure of Brian Michael Bendis. But I will say this: when it comes to humor, that's definitely something that I go to Marvel for.
Yeah, DC's never had the strong suit for humor, really. I mean, you might get a little bit in something like Teen Titans, for example, and they have
maybe
their kid-friendly books, like the Rough book or whatever, with the dog, and Scooby-Doo, and well, unless it's Scooby-Doo Apocalypse, then they're gonna take themselves seriously, I guess. But
anything but that.
Yeah, DC has definitely struggled on that front, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because it plays to their audience.
Yeah,
DC fans typically don't want the silly, obnoxious humor, which is why I think a lot of DC fans have revolted against the Whedon scenes in Justice League.
Yeah.
And I don't think for particularly good reasons, with the exception of Batman's lines sometimes. But I don't know how much of that was Whedon, how much of that was just the script. But there is something to be said where, fans of DC are looking for a certain thing, and fans of Marvel are looking for another thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. You go to what you gravitate to naturally. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
but
yeah, of course.
it does breed a little bit of cynicism and tribalism, and yeah. Person A is better than person B, and creator A is better than person B, and artist A is better than person B, and
like these are the ones that I relate to and I grew up with, and I can't relate to anything from that side because I have no frame of reference for what their lives are like.
Yeah.
That's I think that's usually what it's always going to come down to, is like your first exposure usually ends up forming like what kind of comics you're going to be into.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are influenced by like cartoons they watched as a kid.
Definitely.
Us especially, because we had some of the best superhero cartoons.
Yeah.
The early to mid 90s, into the late 90s, and even the early 2000s,
to an extent.
There was, great superhero shows. There was Spider-Man with the Aerosmith theme at the beginning, from Joe Perry.
Yeah.
You have X-Men with the very iconic music, of course.
Yeah,
you have,
that no one will ever forget.
You have that awful Iron Man cartoon.
Ooh.
We had Batman the Animated Series. We had Superman the Animated Series. We had Batman and Robin the Animated Series. We had Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. And just a lot of really great shows from both companies, really, that influenced a lot of kids of our generation.
Yeah, that was kind of a golden age of cartooning.
Yeah, and I mean, then we kind of bled into like the Teen Titans era.
Yeah.
I think that's when it started going back to being more cartoony and silly. There was the Batman, I guess, but they took a lot of chances in changing things, and I don't think a lot of people, especially people like us that grew up with Batman the Animated Series,
probably felt like it was changing a bit too much.
Yeah. And then they had the Brave and the Bold, which is the opposite direction, but just as extreme, of a change.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of changes and a lot of things that influences generations differently, and I think people from our generation are a little bit less, divisive with their comic book rivalries. I mean, you could even go with like Vertigo versus Icon, and
right.
Dark Horse versus Image, and all these different things you could try to compete with. But generally, the divisiveness comes down to like Marvel, DC, and one being kind of lighter, more visually like brighter colored, and more, I don't know, I wouldn't say kid friendly, but just everybody friendly.
Yeah.
And then DC is more the kind of dark, brooding,
it's like the
darker stories that I think sometimes they step on their own feet trying to copy Marvel, and I think Marvel does the same thing in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Where they, Marvel tries to release a darker book, and then they just kind of stumble over themselves because the aesthetic doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And then DC, in my opinion, like Batgirl is a perfect example, where they had an amazing run of Batgirl with Gail Simone, and then they changed to this suburban, goofy, bright purple, bright yellow Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, who's just a suburban college grad student who sleeps around all the time and fights, trans people dressed as her. Like
it's been a weird time for Batgirl currently.
It was a very bad transition, in my opinion, and I think they were doing just that, where they were trying to make a more everybody friendly book instead of sticking to what they did well.
Right.
And in my opinion, I know a lot of people, particularly Marvel people, liked it. But for me personally, I was just like, oh, this is not the DC aesthetic that I appreciate and that makes me a fan. And they've done that with several characters now, where they try to copy that aesthetic, and they just always seem to fall on their feet when they do it, and those books end up canceled or something.
Right.
If Batgirl wasn't Batgirl, I'm fairly certain she would have been canceled a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
If it wasn't a Bat book,
Which are usually guaranteed sales if you just put the word "bat" on it.
Exactly. So, do you think there's anything else? I mean, the movies are obviously people.
Yeah.
I mean, people that don't even read comic books, have never picked up a comic book in their life, love to argue about the dichotomy between the Marvel movies and the DCEU movies, which I think is funny because I think it actually originated with the Nolan trilogy, where people were saying the Nolan trilogy is amazing. Like, these are Oscar-winning movies. They're amazing. They're outstanding narratively. I mean, a lot of people give Dark Knight Rises a little too much credit, but visually it was still impressive. It was still cool. It was still the Nolan aesthetic.
Yeah.
And so people were like, "Oh, DC is clearly superior to these silly Marvel movies with Iron Man and Hulk." And at the time they were probably right. But now Marvel has become this giant juggernaut, where even their bad movies aren't that bad,
Right. It's like they can't be stopped.
And they kind of pale in comparison to the DCEU movies seem to pale in comparison to the new Marvel universes. And I think there's a lot of bitterness for the people that were very loyal to Marvel and the Marvel movies in particular. From the Nolan trilogy days.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that animosity from the kind of back and forth mockery. So anything else to add to that?
Well,
is there a particular form of comic rivalry that you think?
I was actually going to mention the similarities between the comic rivalries of the 90s and basically the comic book movie rivalries of the current day. They seem to be very similar.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you're a little bit older than me, so maybe you remember it a little bit better. But for me, I thought like both companies weren't great in the 90s beyond the cartoons.
Yeah.
I know DC for sure had probably the worst era of, I mean, they had some pretty bad stuff in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
But they were pretty pretty bad in the 90s there, and I think Marvel wasn't too far off either. I don't remember there being like really that much competitiveness. I think if anything, a lot of people wish they were all together so they could see them in TV shows together and stuff.
Yeah, that was one thing that was interesting was they did, for the sake of trying to consolidate and still make money, the Amalgam universe was made where they kind of mixed and matched certain characters, like Dark Claw was Batman and Wolverine, and
I think the Versus series also happened in the late 90s.
Yeah.
It's a series where they had like Storm going up against Wonder Woman and Superman against the Hulk and those sorts of things. I think Spider-Man went up against Batman and those sorts of things.
Yeah, which is why questions like that, at least on things like Reddit, will probably still be asked to this day.
Yeah. And I don't think the brands necessarily actively pursue this, but I think both brands, Marvel and DC in particular, understand that there's financial gain in having such a fervent rivalry, having your fan bases go after each other because they're inspired to support you more, even if you haven't necessarily earned it every time.
Right.
In the case of DCEU, I think there's a big prevalence of that where they have the good vibes of the Nolanverse, they have the great history and the great comics, but they obviously pale in comparison to the product that Disney and Marvel have been putting out for the past 10 years or whatever. But because there's such a tribe-like defensiveness that DC fans of this particular cinematic universe have, they just keep supporting the kind of weaker product, even though they've seen in the past that they can get a far superior product than what they're necessarily getting right now. The exception being probably Wonder Woman. But even Wonder Woman had a pretty weak third act where there were some things where it stepped on its own feet,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But overall, it's been a weaker slate of films altogether. And
Yeah,
there is that kind
definitely.
of tribal nature about it, where they group into their tribe of DC cinematic fans, and they group into their, you know, fervent Marvel cinematic fans. And I'm a DC fanboy, but I very easily recognize that the Marvel universe typically has the much superior product. Um,
In terms of movies.
post Nolanverse, yes,
Yeah.
exclusively for movies on this context. I think DC absolutely destroys Marvel in like animated features nowadays.
Yes.
Marvel's animated features do not hold up.
Mm-mm.
Typically, there are exceptions, but for me, I watch those and I'm like, man, how is WB so much better at animated stuff, but Marvel
Yeah.
is so much better at the current cinematic stuff? When DC is in LA,
Right.
I don't know.
There's a lot that goes into like the differences and how they both approach each medium,
Yeah,
and it definitely shows. And I think the appreciation that each set of fans have for their favorite company, I think it just kind of lends itself to deepening either the rivalry, or maybe in some cases, like if there's like oversaturation, you'll see people kind of go to the other side.
yeah,
It's
sure.
like, oh yeah, I've gotten like maybe my fill of too much darkness. I'm gonna go over to Marvel and
Sure.
see what the fun is all about.
Absolutely, and that's
Yeah.
another good feature of having the two separate ideas and the two common threads throughout these comics. So you know what you're going to expect from DC, you know what you're going to expect from Marvel, and you know what to pursue for
Yeah.
your tastes. Typically, there's
Usually.
there's always exceptions to the rule. There's so many comics out there. There's so many writers, so many artists. They stray from time to time, both sides. And both sides, like I said, typically try to copy each other a little bit.
It's very
And,
true.
Yeah,
It's,
sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it does.
yeah.
I think another thing to consider when we're thinking about these heated rivalries that don't really seem to exist for other comic companies.
Yeah.
You don't see Popeye fans going crazy with their rivalry with Archie Comics or something. These,
Right.
These things don't happen. You don't see Dark Horse going at Image or Lion Forge, or
Right.
Titan Books going after Aftershock or something. This doesn't happen.
Right.
I think a lot of this kind of tribal mentality, in addition to the history we've discussed, I think a lot of this kind of DC Marvel strife comes from growing up with these long-term characters that, with a lot of Image books, it's one or two off. Invincible is there, but it's going to end. Kirkman has established it's going to end. It hasn't been around that long, and it's going to end. Walking Dead again.
Yeah.
Hasn't been around that long, and it's going to end. And for a lot of these books from, say, Image, Dark Horse might be the exception, but for a lot of these characters and a lot of these arcs, they don't have like a shared universe. They're not too connected as a brand too
Right.
much. They're mostly independent circumstances, for every book.
Yeah.
Um,
Isolated universes.
you do have kind of the long-term, characters like Spawn and like Hellboy. You got Valiant to a lesser extent, but they've obviously gotten into pop culture far less than, say, Marvel and DC.
Right.
I think there's something to that longevity that these characters don't change a whole lot. They experience, period changes, but typically their stories and their trademarks and their symbolism and their ideas don't stray too far from what it used to be. And I think that contributes a lot to these kind of fervent tribalist loyalties, where you do have those nostalgic memories of, pursuing particular DC characters or particular Marvel characters and being fans of those particular characters and buying a T-shirt that represents those particular characters, or reading comics that had those particular characters, or collecting trading cards, or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
And I think that in and of itself makes the rivalry even stronger, because people associate criticism of their tribe, of their brand, as a criticism of their memories, of their childhood, of their
Right.
you know, whatever.
In some cases, their identity, because that some people tend to latch on to certain characters,
Yeah.
and as a result, tend to latch on to that world that their characters associated with.
And I think that's true for a lot of things. You could name any number of things that have kind of a bilateral opposition. Politics. Very obvious example. If you grew up in a conservative household, you're most likely more conservative and more aligned with, say, a red
a
party.
red state, yeah.
A red state, red party, red aspects, groups that are red friendly. If you grew up in a more progressive household or, liberal household, you probably lean a little bit more to the blue side, and you probably skew things to the blue side's argument, just as much as the red side skews things to the red side argument. And, bands, me and my buddies used to argue about whether Black Sabbath was better or Led Zeppelin was better, and that's one where I actually crossed over. I actually got convinced, and I went to the Led Zeppelin side after a while.
Hey.
But, just small things. Back in the day, they had the Rolling Stones versus the Beatles, and completely different music. But because that's what we associate with our identity, and that's what we associate with our happy memories, we have to defend it. And anything that attacks them or even criticizes them is an attack on my identity, is an attack on my personality. And you see that it's all over the internet, on Twitter and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Anytime there's criticism of anything, including Justice League, there's always a backlash from some kind of community that is just blindly loyal. And maybe they do genuinely enjoy it or whatever, and generally think the criticisms are invalid. But most of the time, it's just seeing things through rose-colored glasses and seeing the criticism or the attack on something as a criticism of your identity, of yourself, in a small kind of way. You see it in all kinds of reviews: music reviews, video game reviews, book reviews. My best friend's a huge Game of Thrones fan, and every once in a while, ask me, why won't you watch this with me or whatever. And I'm like, I watched the first season. I read the first book. I don't like it, man. It's just not my thing.
It's not for you.
It sucks for him because he likes it so much, and he sees it so much as part of his identity in a way that we all do, with certain things,
Oh yeah.
If someone tried to argue with me about the validity of Lord of the Rings being, lesser than something, similar, I would probably take it personally at first, until I thought rationally. I was like, I'm overreacting to this. This is kind of silly.
Maybe the same thing with the Cincinnati Bengals.
How dare you, sir? We are a hallowed team. But yes, there is an element to that too.
Yeah.
But that's part of the fun of sports.
Yeah.
The whole point is to be ridiculous and irrational with your support and fandom.
And your distaste for teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh yeah. The one good part of Dark Knight Rises. The destruction of Heinz Field. But I think everything we've touched on is, absolutely a contributing factor. And when you have these established companies and comic book, heroes that have been around since the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s,
Yeah.
that's a lot of time for, identity to kind of build up an association with these companies and these groups, whereas groups like Image and Dark Horse and Lions Forge and Aftershock and Titan Books, Vault Comics, even Valiant to a lesser extent, and Vertigo,
things that have jumped up only within the last 20 to 30 years.
These companies change a lot over time. They have a lot of turnover, they have a lot of poaching and loss, and they have many more isolated stories and characters with few exceptions, and really they don't have that kind of historical animosity from the corporate sabotage and copying. You don't have the things like with Bendis where he's leaving Marvel and going to DC, and some people are seeing him as a traitor, Jim Lee leaving Marvel and ending up with Image and DC, those sorts of things,
Yeah.
So there's those kind of identity politics, there's the kind of attrition of talent and, ideas. There's the obvious similarities between both, groups where, you know, the DC books had the Justice League first, but then Marvel had to create their own team and made the Avengers, and all these sorts of things and dynamics where I can see how people maybe irrationally at times go a little too hard on their alliances and their the things they perceive as part of their own identity. So
only a little.
Is there anything you wanted to add, or you think we covered it?
I think we covered that pretty well, I think.
Yeah, not bad. All right, let's get into my topic. It's a little bit shorter, hopefully. I just thought it would be fun to talk about if you could have any collectible from the comic books. What would you want and why?
Because there's so many things that I want.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw one out there. I would really love to have the first issues of Detective Comics, number, I think, 27. It's the first Batman appearance. I'd really love to have the first Superman appearance when, with the car over his head.
Yeah.
And I'd really love to have the first Wonder Woman book from Sensational Comics,
Yeah.
I think having those 3 books, I mean, ideally in a perfect world, they'd be in perfect condition and they'd all be autographed by the creators,
Oh, yeah.
But I
My
mean,
God.
in any form, it would be wonderful if, first print. And I would treasure those forever. I would not let those things leave my sight unless I was donating them to a museum or something.
Right. This would be like a glass case in the middle of a museum room with a lot of lasers where you got to be like Catwoman to get your hands on it.
And our last episode, we talked about gimmicks that comic companies use to kind of sell books. One gimmick that totally gets me is first appearances.
Oh, yeah.
If they're introducing a new character that isn't like a rip-off of a former character. For example, I don't give a shit about Riri Williams. I don't care about the female version of Thor that took over.
Yeah.
They're not a new character. They're just the same character being tossed into the diversifier machine and thrown back out,
Yeah, but that first issue of Fantastic Four that introduces a character like Black Panther, on the other hand.
Yeah.
Or like Amazing Fantasy number, I'm forgetting the one where it's Spider-Man's first appearance.
Yeah. And then Wolverine, first appearance in a Hulk book.
Oh, yeah.
Most people don't know that.
Right.
He was just this Canadian villain dude who came over and tried to chop him up.
Yeah, this yellow dude with what looked like pig stickers coming out of his hands.
Yeah, and he was just so popular they turned him into an X-Men.
Oh, yeah.
So, books like that would be awesome. And you never know. You never know what's going to hit it off.
That's true.
So I always kind of they always suck me in if I know there's a new character in there for the first time, especially if they're on the cover, even a villain, hero, anti-hero, anti-villain, whatever. I always get lured in, and I'm like, crap, I'm going to buy this. I'm probably not going to like it, but I'm going to buy it because it's a new character, and I can't help myself.
The entire original first printing of every single Watchmen comic.
That'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had a chance to buy some of these collectibles. I was gonna collect the whole run of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
And another one that they had was a few issues of the Watchmen. This is at World's Greatest Comics up in Westerville, here in Columbus, Ohio. And I love going there for the more collectible stuff. Laughing Ogre is good for like new stuff and a large variety of things. They got some old stuff, but most of their
stuff is new and for like keeping current.
Yeah, most of their appeal is just the diversity of covers that they have and the number of issues they have, so you can usually get what you want that's just come out or whatever.
Yeah.
World's Greatest Comics up in Westerville is much better at having like well-preserved, well-packaged, and unfortunately accurately priced collectible comics,
Yeah.
But they make it so easy on you, because you don't have to risk getting it from eBay or something and, ended up with a damaged comic or something that's a third printing that they lied on eBay about or something,
Ooh,
It's happened to me once or twice for Lady Mechanica.
Yeah.
So those are just a handful of examples. obviously, the big characters. Everybody wants the first Spider-Man. Everybody wants the first Punisher.
Oh yeah.
First X-Men. You name it.
Oh
But
my God. Yeah. I think it's for obvious reasons. Uncanny X-Men, I think it's number 266.
Yeah.
Is the first appearance of Gambit.
that'd be pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, the thing is, like, my favorite character is Nightwing. Everybody knows this if you've been watching this show for any length of time.
Oh yeah.
The problem with my fandom of Nightwing is that his first issue of existence as a character was Batman and Robin, where he was a sales gimmick, essentially, to get more kids to buy the book. And then when he became Nightwing, I think in the 80s, he had the ridiculous disco costume and the beginnings of the mullet, that eventually became his staple for a few years until he changed into the modern costume we know and love, with the wing on the front and just the black,
Yeah, he had a whole lot of yellow going on in that first getup.
Yeah, he had the high collar, the Doctor Strange popped collar and the bright blue and yellow, and it was so goofy and silly. And if I collected that first issue with him as, I think it was New Teen Titans where he first premiered as Nightwing.
Yeah.
If I did that, I'd be like, I'm happy I have this, I guess, but I don't really want to display it. Because I hate this costume so much.
I'm going to keep it for my private collection.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to have to see him in his original getup.
Yeah, I'll be like Smeagol or Gollum, hoarding it. No one can see it, Oh, precious. Oh, yes. Parents to take it from us. But, yeah, that's probably a collectible everybody would think I want, but I really don't.
Yeah. Daredevil, when he originally came out, his getup was kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna have yellow and red.
Yeah.
And none of this is gonna work really.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gonna look weird. And, like, the part of it that's red is going to look like you're wearing a weird, like, red wife beater on top of, like, a long sleeve yellow shirt.
Yeah.
And you're also kind of into sticks.
Yeah. Another thing I'm big on is commissioned artwork. There's a few comic artists, like Banks, for example, creator of Kyle Rayner.
Yeah.
I have his email so that I can request, like, custom art and stuff, and once I have more money, I will request that, a commission for him. But I think it's so cool when people have those just, images. Usually artists will charge a rate. I know, like, Neil Adams does a lot of commission work and stuff like that. Banks, obviously. But that's just awesome. I love seeing, like, the pencils. Like the pencils, sometimes they ink them, sometimes they don't. But when they have the pencils and they, you commission them and you have them up, and sometimes they let you request certain characters, and sometimes they just surprise you. And either way, you're usually pretty happy with it,
Oh, yeah. From the original artists, of course.
Having those original pencils and artists, and it's a unique piece of art made just for you, and that's what's so special about it. And I think that's what makes it so valuable to me, that you can, in a lot of cases, obviously the big names, it's a little harder to get those commissions, Usually they don't do anything unless it's for, like, a charity event or something. But
right.
For artists that, maybe their heyday has gone past, or, they're not working in the industry quite as much, they do commissions on the side for, to keep up their skills and to, make a little extra dough on the side, whatever the case may be. But yeah, there's a handful out there that just make really, really great quality panels and stuff. And, sometimes people are kind of skeevy about it. They'll get a commission from a very kind artist that does this hard work for them and sends it to them, for whatever their commission is, $100, $200, $300, whatever. and then they sell it for twice as much on eBay or something, you know.
Ooh.
That's what I don't like. I hate when I see like resale on panels, you know. It sometimes it might be for a legitimate reason, maybe, you know, you lost your job and you need to buy groceries for your kids, or you know, somebody passed away and they had this great collection of, you know, custom art, but nobody in the family wanted it, so they're selling it off or whatever. Understandable, totally understandable, but it always rubs me the wrong way when I see this stuff on like eBay and stuff, because this is hard work that artists put in to satisfy you as a particular customer. More often than not, they kind of scope you out, you know. What do you like? What do you not like? What characters do you like? You know, what poses do you like? What's your favorite comic book memory or something? You know, they scope you out just a little bit, just so they can put a little bit of your identity into this custom piece of artwork and sign it for you. And to me, that's like receiving a letter from your favorite athlete or, you know, favorite movie star, like addressed to you. That it's the equivalent of that to me, but better, you know. So,
easily.
I'm a huge fan of, you know, custom commissioned artwork. As a collectible in particular. I will say one thing I'm not a fan of is these statues and, you know, any kind of like 3D like statue or Funkos, yeah. Funko Pops, like all this. If you enjoy that stuff,
more power to you.
More power to you. I have nothing against people who enjoy it. But for me in particular, I see it as kind of a waste, because usually the concepts are drawn first anyway, or they're based on something that was drawn up in the past. And often, in my opinion, I think they would probably look cooler as something that was drawn up or penciled out or something. But when they get molded into these big plastic contraptions or whatever, they take up so much space, and they just seem so wasteful. You know, they're made of petroleum products, you know, they're usually huge and gaudy, and you can't really put them anywhere unless you have a special like podium or, you know, counter or something, you know, to display them. They get dust all over them, and, you know, just over time the colors fade, because usually they're exposed to all sorts of different light and stuff, because they're not a flat surface. It's harder to protect them, and, you know, people mess with the arms and stuff and try to like pose them and end up breaking them and stuff, you know. For me, it's just not worth it. It's not a collectible I desire at all. You know?
Yeah, it would be a nice thing to look at in like a museum setting, or a setting where the bus could be protected, or like in some way, shape, or form taken care of.
They become cluttered looking really quickly, especially if you have more than, you know, 5 or 6, you know.
Yeah.
Unless you have a really big house, or, you know, man/woman cave or whatever, you know, the case might be. You know, like most people just put them on shelves on their bookshelf and wherever they'll fit, and then it just looks cluttered, and nobody gets to really appreciate them.
Yeah, that would be the type of thing where, like, one of the things that I do when I'm not taking part in this podcast is I am in a couple of D&D groups.
You fucking nerd.
You bastard. One of the things that I've known players to do, or DMs, Dungeon Masters, is to take little figurines that they use to represent either the player characters or the enemy combatants, and they'll get these ones that haven't been painted at all and paint it themselves.
Yeah.
Now, translating that painting skill over to painting a bust that just comes as gray and is just waiting for someone to paint it, that, I think, could be a cool hobby. Turn it into, like, your own type of thing to do with collectible.
Sure.
But apart from that, I really don't see why anyone would invest in more than one bust or full figure, as it were, like, no matter what scale they're asking for it in.
Yeah. And I don't deny that a lot of them look really cool, and they're really well done.
Yeah.
But my problem is they're not particularly unique, because they're mass produced. Usually they make 1,000 of them or 2,000, however many they think they can sell. They're not limited by, you know, factors like the artist's hand and what is inspiring to the artists or what the artist's intentions are. The artist just makes this mold and ship as many as you think you can sell. Don't make any more.
Yeah, I think there's just something about like the 3D aspect to it that kind of it feels like there's something removed from the artist that would like normally just sketch it, draw it on paper.
And it's not to discredit the people that do make these. Like, these are skilled artists and craftsmen that make these things, but I don't know. I feel like it just lacks a certain aesthetic. Laughing Ogre, for example, they're big on selling like statues and stuff. They got a big display case in the middle of their store. That is pretty cool, if you could get a big expensive display case like that where you can literally walk around it in the 3D view and appreciate it.
Yeah.
But then you have to have somewhere in the middle of the floor to put it, where you can walk around it and appreciate it from a 3D perspective. And you do have to have the big expensive, probably custom case, to display them.
Yeah.
And there's just so much added cost. And I feel like in the end, unless you have a big living space, unless you're fairly well off, it's really hard to have things like that and appreciate them.
Yeah. I mean, cost is always going to be a barrier for entry.
Particularly for what you spend for them, because, you can get a new comic for $3, $4, or $5.
Yeah.
Statues usually cost a few hundred.
Yeah. There's no sleeving a bust.
Yeah. So it's a little difficult. Any other collectibles? You would like to collect it?
I would say particularly movie posters.
Yeah.
Like a poster for Batman 1989.
That'd be pretty awesome.
Oh my God.
I think movie posters are definitely cool, but I think I have maybe three small problems with them. One is they're very hard to upkeep.
Yeah, that is very true. Without like framing it.
Yeah, you have to basically frame it immediately, which is expensive.
Yeah.
Because they're large. Or they're going to wear out really quick. The colors, because they're made on cheap paper, that's meant to be, stapled to some kid's wall or something,
Yeah.
In their bedroom for 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, that's a different upkeep.
They need to be laid flat without creasing them on accident or folding them or anything like that. And hopefully they came undamaged in the tube or whatever you got it in.
Hopefully.
And then you have to have it matted and framed, which is expensive. And then you still have to hide the surface area, which is far larger than a comic book, for example, from, direct sunlight, because it'll fade really quick.
Right.
So that's a troubles, but if you can get past all that, I think it's totally worth it. And I have one other small problem with movie posters is I remember as a kid going to the movie theater and they would sell them at the movie theater, or they'd give them away as a promo and something like that, You could usually get a pretty cool movie poster at the movie theater. They don't do that anymore. At least not the places I've gone.
Yeah.
The places you get a movie poster nowadays is usually at like Walmart.
Right.
Or some big department store, and usually they're not movie centric, they're like a character centric poster.
Yeah.
You get a big poster of Wonder Woman, for the Justice League movie or something like that, or a big poster of Cyborg. But
yeah, it's just basically a printout of like the promotional art.
Yeah, it's rarely like the full movie poster with the credits and the characters and all those things. So I feel like those aren't even really around as much anymore. Unless you work for the movie theater, and you can steal one of the promo ones before they throw it away.
Yeah. Shout out to anyone of those people who does work for those studios. If you want to maybe contact us, get some info on that.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of people have the past, 5 or 6 years have been taking those big cardboard cutouts and taking them home. I know a lot of GameStop people do it. I don't know. I haven't seen too many movie ones, but I know a lot of people swipe those because they basically just get thrown away.
That's one thing that I thought was interesting about the latest Justice League movie, is they had this pretty extensive cardboard cutout.
Yeah.
Where
you could stand with them and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. We should go back to the theater and take photos and then not see the movie. Because I won't give them my money again.
It's like, I'm sorry, we don't have tickets. We just want a photo with this thing.
Yeah. I'd say one other thing that a lot of people collect is trading cards.
Yeah, those used to be huge in the 90s.
Absolutely. I feel like they're less prevalent today because now they have like digital trading cards where basically you can battle with them and whatever through a digital app, just a little easier than like taking a pen and paper and like trying to keep track of everything and learn the game, Now you have a device in your hand that can teach you everything, and you don't have to buy a book to protect the cards, and you don't have to worry about losing the cards because they're on the app,
It's so much easier now.
But I think it doesn't have, for me personally, I feel like if I was a kid in this era, I would not be interested at all in either one, because if you get the physical ones, nobody's gonna want to play with you or use them with you or look at them with you,
because most people don't have it.
And if you get the digital ones, it's like they're not gonna last. It's not like you
Right.
got to get a new phone or a new iPad or a new computer or whatever, and you're not gonna care anymore, and you're just gonna forget about them.
And for card games on your phone, Hearthstone's already a thing.
Yeah. Gwent.
Gwent, that one too.
There's a bunch of stuff out there, but I used to have a lot of the Marvel collectible cards.
Yeah.
I never bothered to learn the game because it was stupid. There's Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Came later, and I guess Magic was around. I don't know. I didn't play it, but there's other card games to play if you wanted to go that route. For me, I had baseball cards that I inherited, and then I had those Marvel cards that I really loved, and I would literally sit, on my bed or something, and just go through my whole collection of Marvel cards and just look at the artwork and think they were so cool, and like imagine stories for like what they were doing in the card and stuff. Like, I don't know why, but I remember the Sabretooth one really vividly.
Oh,
it was very much like the 90s style Sabretooth from the show and stuff,
with like the weird
big
thing, like the fur
big puff
collar.
Ball. Yeah. And he's
And
kind of going forward like this, with the teeth hanging out and stuff.
Yeah,
it was just awesome. I love those cards. I don't remember them all. I remember the Sabretooth one, and I remember like a Cyclops one I had, but like I don't remember a whole lot of them. But I remember the happiness I had associated with looking through them and stuff. And
I remember the artwork being very glossy, weirdly.
Mm-hmm.
And by glossy, I don't mean that the colors were glossy. Like they somehow managed to make these characters seem realistic looking ish, but like in a glossy manner. Like they occupied 3D space without using those weird hologram things.
Yeah, you're right on.
Which I thought was incredible.
Each one had like a cool like textured background and stuff.
Yeah.
I love those cards, and I know a lot of people, like, because there were just so many of them, a lot of people just throw them away now. Like, I know some comic shops, like, have them in the back if you ask for them, but, like, most people don't even want them. But I kind of want them.
I do,
And I'm afraid if I ask, they'll, like, try to charge me, an arm and a leg for them to, like, try to make back the money they thought they were going to get for them,
Either that or just kind of look at you funny.
As the one person that still wants them, Because I remember those memories, and I kind of want to see them again, like in person, to see if they were as cool as I thought they were,
Yeah.
And if they are, I want to keep them,
Yeah.
I'll put them in the little card packs and hang them up. I don't care.
It's like, hey,
reliving
reliving the 90s. They actually, for some weird reason, Marvel had a printing of comic books like this year that had like those cards
those
as
variant issues.
Yeah.
They were fine, but they did the weird thing that they've been doing with the toys too, where they have the action figure on the cover, but it's like in the packaging with the packaging around. I'm like, who wants that? They did the same thing with the card, where they put the picture of the card, but then they put like a card background and like wrappers and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want that. I want the card art.
Right.
Big and blown up. That's what I want.
This came off as weird.
Yeah. I really wonder who did the artwork for all those cards.
I am so curious.
That guy deserves some credit. I'll put his name and his picture right here if I can find it. Him or her. because they did some awesome
Just like
artwork.
right here.
Is there any other big collectibles you can think of that comic book stuff you'd really love? For me, it's, big ones, signed comics, variant collections that I really love, like the steampunk one and obviously the bombshell ones. There's other ones, obviously. Big
First appearance issues.
Big favorite runs, like I collected all the Blackest Night books. I have the whole Wake run by Scott Snyder. The Wake was really good. I have the whole Witches run. I have all but one of the Hush books. The only one I can't, the original Hush run.
Yeah.
The only one I don't have is the one with Superman and Batman on the cover. Or Batman's turned. Or, excuse me, Superman's turned. And that's the hardest one to get because it's the most expensive. But once I have that one, I'll have my whole Hush collection, and I'll be framing those.
Nice.
My favorite Jim Lee covers,
Yeah, that was a magical time for Jim Lee.
Yeah, that was an outstanding run too. It's just beautiful art, cool story. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, beyond those, I can't really think of the art. Obviously, any kind of commissioned art, but it's just so pricey, And if I could ever find those cards again, I'll take them off your hand if you don't want them. I probably wouldn't pay much for them, but I'll take them off your hands.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything else? You got your movie posters.
Movie posters. I personally would love Kyle Rayner's original run with his original costume.
Yeah. I have a few of them autographed too.
Oh yeah. There's Uncanny X-Men #1 with all of the Jim Lee covers.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. And that entire first run with Jim Lee. What else would I like? I'm sure there's more, and I think there's always going to be more that I add to the list. But I'm going to keep it to that for now.
Yeah. Well, I think that pretty much wraps this topic up pretty well. What do you think?
I think that pretty much covers it. If you guys have any collectibles that you would like to mention, go ahead and leave a comment down in the comment section.
Yeah, let us know, because I'm sure we forgot stuff. I mean, I even got an old issue of Comic Collector here.
Hey!
I don't know when I got this, but I got it. It's really outdated prices. I know a lot of people like to collect the newspaper strips and stuff like that, but I've never been a big fan of that sort of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think. If for example, if you're one of those Funko Pop people, what is it that makes you gravitate towards them? Why do you collect them? Why do you have trouble with space? Do you take them out of the box, and enjoy them that way, or do you leave them in the box? Because a lot of them lose value.
I actually have several of them that were just kind of given to me by a friend, but they're all Street Fighter related.
I have statues even, for statues and posable action figures and stuff. Do you actually go through the trouble of keeping them in the box and not really taking them out and enjoying them, or do you
unbox them and maybe pose them
and make the effort to get a display case and all that stuff? I'm really curious, so let me know. Movie poster people, are there real legit movie posters anymore?
Yeah.
Are you able to get them? Are they available? Let me know. Well, Emery, I think that wraps up another mediocre edition of Hit the Books podcast.
Mediocre.
Thank you all for sticking with us. If you like what you hear, be sure to hit like and subscribe down below, and follow us on your podcast services and social networks of choice. Remember, we're on Twitter at HTBvids. We're on Facebook at /HitTheBooks. And we have our website, www.htbvids.com, where you can check out all our latest reviews and content. And if you can't find any of our stream links or whatever, you can literally go to the website, click a big button that I have on the homepage, and go directly to your Stitcher, iTunes, or YouTube page, because we need a little bit more viewers to get our vanity URL for YouTube. So any help you guys want to aid with that is greatly appreciated.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, we come to you with the podcast every Wednesday from here on out, rain or shine, obviously through this holiday. Hopefully we can keep up with the other holidays. We'll see.
I'm pretty sure we can. We're bad enough dudes, right?
Yeah. Remember, last week we just released our first season of instructional videos about boxing, boarding, framing your comics. And I believe my next instructional video series is going to be about how to evaluate your comics, how to make sure you're getting first editions and not something else and something fraudulent, how to evaluate value, how to send in a comic and get it, appraised properly and sealed, and how to make like Excel spreadsheets and stuff to help organize your collection, help you budget, and do these things in a way that won't crush your wallet and your dignity.
Right.
So look forward to season 2. I'll probably be recording that in about a month or so. And be sure to check out our latest reviews. We got Thor Ragnarok and Justice League up over the past 2 weeks. So
Oh, yeah.
be sure to check those out. Let us know what you think. We'd really love to hear your feedback on them. Well, I want to thank you all for sticking with us. I'm your host, Chris Holcomb.
And I'm Emery Saunders.
And we will see you next week.
Excelsior!
Bye-bye.